since 2008, and that's called Global Local Vision. We do a lot of work with government agencies, as Melissa mentioned, as well as nonprofit groups and others. So this has been a wonderful opportunity to get to learn more about the county that I live in and I share the values for. I'm going to move to share screen, and please confirm that this works. Is this working? Can someone?
Yes, we see that.
Okay, thank you. Great. So I'm just going to jump into this and say that we conducted a survey, a telephone survey of people living in unincorporated areas of the county. The telephone survey was conducted between February 3rd and February 19th of this year. 400 randomly selected residents from unincorporated areas of Coconino County were included in this project. So that allows us to generate data at a margin of error of plus or minus 5%. 95% confidence level. Once again, we're Global Local Vision. We're a full service social science research firm based here in Flagstaff, Arizona. We started off the survey asking respondents what they like most about living in Coconino County. And as you can see from this slide, this pie chart, that the number one response was the environment, something to do with the environment. This was an open-ended question, and we coded responses. So people mentioned something to do with the environment, the natural beauty of the environment, the location. And then the second most widely provided response had to do with the climate, 4 seasons, or being in a dry community, but something to do with the climate. And lifestyle was very important. Lifestyle incorporates a rural lifestyle, a more freedom to be on a larger amount of land. So lifestyle was an inclusive category for option 3. And then people mentioned proximity, the location of the county, the outdoor recreation opportunities, 7%, the community itself, 7%. And then there were other responses, diversity, jobs, something else, don't know. But the environment, climate, lifestyle were the options, the responses that rose to the top of what people like most about living in Coconino County. We asked people what was the most important issue facing the county into the future. And this is important because we allowed people 2 responses. You'll see 3 columns of information. The middle column is issue 1, the first issue mentioned by respondents. The last column, the third column, is issue 2, the second issue mentioned by respondents. And then we compiled those to become the percent of respondents mentioning each issue. So 1/3, just over 1/3 of respondents mentioned managing growth as an important issue. That's growth, that's development. Some people said we're becoming overpopulated. Others said we have to regulate the construction of housing opportunities, for instance. The second most popular response here, mentioned by just over 1/4 of respondents, was drought or water availability. People concerned about water into the future. 22% of people mentioned something to do with infrastructure. Most typically, this involved roads, a comment on roads. Roads need to be improved. But there are other responses that fell in this category too. The category of infrastructure included services, included the internet. People wanted to get better services, higher quality services, more services. Affordable housing was mentioned by 14% of people as an issue moving into the future. Wildfires and flooding, including post-wildfire flooding, also 11%. Cost of living was mentioned by 10%. And then there are several other issues that received responses, percentage of responses in the single digits. Community values. We asked here, we presented characteristics of Coconino County. And we asked people to rate the importance of those characteristics to themselves personally. We gave people a scale from 1 to 5, where 5 was this is very important to me, and 1 was not so important to me. And as you can see, most responses were in the 4s. All responses were 3.0 or higher, so they'd be in the positive side of that scale. In other words, all characteristics of the county that we presented were important, but we can see a hierarchy of importance. Access to clean air and water and the natural environment were the highest rated characteristics of the county. And this is looks similar to what we saw before in terms of the most important issues facing the county: the environment. Effective response to crises and disasters was rated highly. Access to quality health care, good roads, these are the infrastructure issues, quality educational opportunities, preservation of a rural lifestyle, affordable housing, economic opportunities, and parks and outdoor recreation opportunities, all rated 4.0 or higher in importance to the person. Again, this is a scale from 1 to 5. Also important, though of a lesser importance perhaps, living in a close-knit community, cultural diversity, and having a strong tourism industry. So again, I want to emphasize these are all positively held characteristics, and we can see some were more important to the community of unincorporated residents than others. Melissa and her team have been doing an excellent job moving around the county, holding focus group discussions. And out of that qualitative approach to understanding what people in different parts of the county believe and feel and think, they distilled the responses into a set of values that they were repeatedly hearing. Well, we went and presented those values to the public to see if there was confirmation. Do people share these values? And the blue part of each bar, each column here, is people saying, I definitely share this value. The green part of the bar, the column, is people saying they somewhat share these values. So when we put them together, we can see who shares these values. Well, all 8 values presented to the public, again, values coming out of the focus group discussions, are shared by the members, residents living in unincorporated areas of the county. We're seeing this. The number 1 shared value, the most highly shared value, 89% of people definitely sharing the value of living in a place with healthy forests and decreased wildfire risks. 89% definitely share this. 9% say they somewhat share this. Together, 98%, nearly every respondent shares this value. Also highly shared, protecting the natural environment, and followed by access to open spaces, trails, public lands. We're on the 4th column now, an economy that supports rural communities, putting definitely share and somewhat share together. We're seeing that 97%, nearly everybody, every resident in the unincorporated areas shares this value. A county that effectively responds to climate impacts, also highly shared, 95% of respondents we spoke to. Tourists that respect people in our environment, again in the 90s, 94%. 93% of respondents share the value. Public services that are provided in consultation with local communities. And then inclusion and diversity within our communities is a value shared by 82% of the residents responding to our survey. We asked people, what is their vision for the future of Coconino County over the next 20 years? This was an open-ended question. Some people provided long answers. Some people provided short answers. Some people honestly said nothing. Like they don't know. They don't have a response to this. They don't know what to believe. But people often provided more than one response. They might say, 2, 3, 4 responses to Vision for the Future. And we coded every response. So if you look at the total, the N is the number of responses coded, 537. Clearly more than the 400 people we spoke to. It incorporates the multiple responses coming out of our survey. When we look at the vision for the future, nearly a quarter of the respondents that we received spoke about environmental protection and sustainable growth. Something to do with environment and sustainable growth. And again, we've seen this in different parts of the survey, so we're seeing cross-verification with our different questions. Infrastructure and transportation was the second most often response provided for Vision for the Future. People wanting more infrastructure, wanting better transportation opportunities. Affordable housing and cost of living, 1 out of 10 people mentioned this, or 1 out of 10 responses referred to this. Economic development and jobs, also 1 out of 10. And as we go down the list, people have mentioned governance and participation, people either wanting the government to be more responsive to the public, or people saying we really appreciate all the participation opportunities that are available to us. Community and cultural preservation, this often spoke to that rural lifestyle we saw elsewhere in the survey. Healthcare access and quality, access to quality healthcare. Education and public services, 5%, and then there are other responses. At the end of the survey, we presented 4 different programs as potentially receiving additional investments. And we wanted to know if people supported additional investments in these program areas or opposed additional investments in these program areas. We presented 4 areas. The first was reducing risk of wildfires and flooding, post-wildfire flooding. 94% of the respondents we spoke to said they support additional investment in this area. 90%, 9 out of 10, said they support additional investment in affordable housing. 83% said they support additional investment in connecting pathways. And this was looking at footpaths and equestrian paths and coming up with an integrated path system for the county. And then public transit, 80% of people said they would support additional investment in public transit. That's a quick run through for the survey. I know we don't have much time, but let's see if we can just go to questions. I can stop sharing and go back here. Are there any questions that I can answer about the data findings? I'm seeing a hand from a meeting guest.
Yeah, this is Sharon Tavares, and I am a little unfamiliar with the names. We've got a lot of unknowns. So I would like to ask the person to identify themselves. When I see a hand raised, I will call. Please identify yourself and please address Dr. Solit, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Rob Wilson. I raised my hand and I will drop it now. So hopefully I'm the person you're speaking to. Dr. Solit, thank you for all the information. It's good to see actual real data as opposed to just collections of random kinds of data. But I'm curious, your last 2 slides, basically, well, the last slide talked about the importance of things like infrastructure and transportation as moving forward. Yet when we asked questions about the values of things, that wasn't even a topic of discussion, or that didn't even make the list. How do you explain the disparity between what we value about our community and what we want to see in the future?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, first of all, I would argue that there's a lot of consistency in what we value and what we want to see for the future. For instance, environmental protection. But I would come back to the origins of the values list. So the values were being generated out of focus group discussions held around the county. The future, the vision for the future, was an open-ended question where we just allowed people to respond on their own terms, and that was recorded and then coded at a later point. So different processes for generating information. One was a list that was provided to us that we were going out and verifying. And in fact, we found that people do share the values that were emanating out of the focus group discussions. And then the second methodology being open-ended, where we just allowed residents to speak for themselves and we coded that information.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Wilson. This again is Chair Ontiveros. I'm not sure why my participant list is so, there's a lot of people listed as unknown. I do see Ms. Shaw, your hand is raised. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Ontiveros. And Fred, I just wanted to mention that we also had that we collected some demographic information with the survey. So I know we don't have slides prepared for that, but that did represent, and you can elaborate on this, that we have a representative cross sample of the current known demographics of the county. So would you just elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are two parts of the survey, if you will. There are the questions. I just presented data from data findings of those questions. But then, as Melissa mentioned, we collect demographic information on the public. And we can see, first of all, as Melissa mentioned, that we do have a cross-section of people living in unincorporated areas of Coconino County. But we also use that information to cross-tabulate responses. So included within the broader report, we have similarities and differences across subpopulation groups. We compare men versus women, for instance, older residents versus younger residents. And we go through roughly 6 or 7 demographics. And then we look at significant relationships. Sometimes when you look at these cross tabulations, it may appear that there's a relationship here, but sometimes that relationship, which appears to the eye, is actually a product of chance. We run those relationships through a statistical test and look at what's significant. And in the report, we include significant differences within members of our unincorporated areas. So there's obviously a full report here, which has more information, and Melissa was referring to that.
Ms. Shaw, I see your hand raised again.
And just to follow up on the report, we can share that with the commission if you'd like to see that. And I haven't sent that out yet, but it's interesting reading, and we'll use this to supplement our visioning work for the comprehensive plan, but also the information coming out of this, the needs and issues will be pretty much repeated and discussed in the comprehensive plan, because we have this good information coming right out of the visioning process that we can then use to write the plan around. If that explains things a little bit more about how this will be used going forward now in our update to the comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you. This is Chair Ontiveros. Thank you for that, Ms. Shaw. I would like to ask if there are any other individuals that would like to ask a question of Dr. Salop. Please raise your hand. Okay, I am not seeing any. Dr. Salop, thank you for such a great presentation. You actually made it easy to understand, and I appreciate that very much. Ms. Shaw, you did suggest that you could send this out to the commissioners. I think that it would be very helpful if you could do that. So I would like to request that you do that, please.
Thank you. We'll send that to you.
Okay. And thank you again, Dr. Salop.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate having the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thanks,
Fred.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, this is still Chair Ontiveros. Why don't we go ahead and continue the Envision 2045 plan? Ms. Shaw, why don't you hit sub-item B, please, which is the focus group discussions are now complete.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of slides to share with you. So let me get to that. Okay. Is the screen displaying?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. So following up on the information that we just heard from the countywide survey, then I just wanted to list here, and we don't need to go through these, but I can share this with you because we've put together a separate document that outlines the process we used for the focus groups. And then these were the 6 questions that we asked during every single focus group. And so you can see it starts out with community values, tell us about the vision for the future. And again, these were also open-ended questions, the needs and issues that impact the communities, and then ongoing trends for the future, ideas for solutions, and then engagement strategies. So we also have, and it's a complementary information to the survey that we just heard. So we can share this with you as well. But here are a few more details, and we've talked as we've gone through this process, we've talked with you every month about some of the numbers of people across the county that we've engaged with, and we've now concluded those focus group meetings. We have had a total of 29 focus groups, but through that process, we actually engaged with 49 different groups because some of the communities, we combined some nearby communities so that there were invitations to one focus group. We had some targeted focus groups, and then we went to 4 of the high schools. So 49 engaged groups. And then overall, we invited 381 participants. And these were people that we got contacts from county supervisors, but also just as we developed the contact lists from community leaders and stakeholders and residents, that those contacts grew. So those were the total numbers as far as engaged and invited people. And then this is a lot to look at, so I don't expect you to really see it, but this just demonstrates each of the locations that we had a focus group and the number of participants for each, for a total of 201 participants in this focus group effort. So the next, and I'll just, if you like, I can just go ahead to the next item under the comprehensive plan update. And that was about, okay, thank you. That's the process for, and this is similar to what we've been talking about, forming the comprehensive plan advisory group. We have started working with supervisors on this process. We are getting names of county residents and leaders and stakeholders from the board of supervisors. We're starting to reach out to those community members to discern their interest and availability to be part of the advisory group. And then once we do have that list compiled, we'll be working with the chair and vice chair of the Planning Commission to make the final selection for that group. So any questions about this before I just go to our last slide that in this update process?
Ms. Shaw, this is Chair Aunt Taveras. Looking at item number 1, where it talks about staff will provide supervisors with a list of potential candidates. So there's the bullet point number 1, focus group attendees by district. And then bullet number 2, others who have expressed interest in being involved. How has that expression of interest come to the county's attention?
Well, as we've gone through, since we've started this process, and even before, there are sometimes people who mention to us, oh, we'd like to be involved on the comprehensive plan in some way. So we've made note of those names as we go along and just include those in the list. But then also supervisors may simply have other contacts that they want to see on this advisory group as well. So this was just if you would kind of starter information for the supervisors, because a lot of the people that attended the focus groups have now had an introduction to the comprehensive plan. They committed a couple, 2.5 hours of their time to talking about the needs and issues. So they were they're kind of already prepared, if you will, to some degree.
Right.
So
Yeah. And I'm happy to hear that, because it sounds like that there are some new people that have kind of joined in, so to speak. Am I correct with that?
We were very excited to connect with new people. In other words, people that we have not met before. And so, yeah, so all around the county, you know, these focus groups were initially, we invited people to these, but then word of mouth spread through communities. So we met a lot of new people through the process. Yeah.
Okay. Personally, I am just very pleased to see that that we have some new people coming in and participating in this. So you did answer my question, and thank you for that. I don't have any other questions, and I don't see any hands raised. So please go ahead, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. Just the last update I had for you about the comprehensive plan update is that we have an open house scheduled now for April 30th. It will be in person here in the Thomas Auditorium at Community Development and on Fort Valley Road. It will be from 4 to 7:30. And the goal is to convey the results of our outreach to date, the intercept surveys, the focus group interviews, a community survey, and to get some additional feedback on those results. And then also, we are hoping that we will have the comprehensive plan advisory group formed at that time, and this could be an introduction for that group as to what we've done to date. So just wanted to make sure you're all aware of this. We will obviously invite you as a commission and do the proper posting for potential notice of quorum. So that's the last update I had on the comprehensive plan.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So then, Mr. McNeely, item number 2. Well, actually, Ms. Shaw, it's probably going to be you presenting item number 2. And probably item number 3. So why don't you just go ahead and move through those items, please?
Thank you. I will. And I don't have slides on these. The regional plan update is, as you know, still underway. And the regional plan committee, is right thick in the middle of reviewing the draft chapters and goals and policies. So those meetings are all hybrid. They take place in person at the City Public Works building, and they're also available to view on Teams. I want to make mention that for the ongoing meetings, then in order to make comments during the meeting, people will need to be present in person. There have been some security issues with the Teams meetings. So just to be aware, if anyone is interested and has a comment to make, to join the meeting in person. Otherwise, the communication will be by email. And the next meeting that is scheduled for the Flagstaff Regional Plan Committee is April 10th. Coming up, and those meetings begin at 6, and the topic will be water resources. Are there any questions on that?
This is Chair Ontiveros. I'm not seeing any, Ms. Shaw, so go ahead and bump to 3.
Okay, and number 3, we're just keeping that on the agenda. And I see somebody's got a screen share.
Oh, sorry about that.
And yeah, we have not heard yet on the results of the Route 66 Brownfields grant application. So we'll keep this on the agenda until we hear whether or not that's been awarded to the coalition. We hope that we hear soon.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Shaw. I don't see any hands raised, so I'm going to assume that there are no questions for you. So Mr. McNeely, would you please go to the study session on cases at our next meeting on April 24th?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have a total of 4 cases we anticipate bringing to you at your public hearing next month. The last 2 are kind of a pair. They go together. But the first one is one item, is case AB 2401. That's abandonment. of an old trail right of way that was never constructed and never used. And along with that, sub 2402, that would be a final plat amendment in the Mormon Lake area. So, Bob, I see you've already shared your screen. Please go ahead and give the commissioners an orientation to this request for next month's hearing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McNeely. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. This case is the Lakeside Park Abandonment and Subdivision Amended Final Plat. So in this case, the property owner is Coconino County Public Works. The applicant is the Schroeder Family Trust, and the representative is Martin of Martin Land Surveys out of Belmont. And the location of this abandonment is Lakeside Park Subdivision at Mormon Lake. And this is the request. The request is an abandonment of an unimproved 97.08 foot portion of Kirby Trail in the Lakeside Park subdivision. And along with that is a subdivision amended final plat to document the abandonment of the trail. And those are required, an amended final plat is required whenever you abandon something like a trail, when you are removing public rights of way. So, good segue to the next one. And this is for those who don't remember or haven't seen an abandonment before. An abandonment is required when public rights of way, and that can be trails or roads, are requested to be abandoned because they no longer serve a public purpose. So if you have a piece of roadway, in this case a trail, that no one's ever used or no one is going to use in the future, then that has to go to first the commission and then to the board for final approval, so that can be abandoned. And when those are abandoned, the adjacent landowners typically take those properties. In this case, there's only one, so that would just be one landowner. And that is, of course, the applicant in this case. So this is a vicinity map showing the location of that trail within that subdivision. You can also see this is Mormon Lake, of course. And this is Lake Mary Road coming through. So this is the general area. And this is an aerial photo showing this, what I'll call the subject property. So the subject property is now on each side of this trail. This is the right of way. If you look at Parcel Viewer, you'll note that there's nothing is closed off when it's a right of way. Like you can kind of see this coming through here, that this is a public right of way roadway, and this is a public right of way trail. So it belongs to the public. So once this is abandoned, then this lot would be put back together, basically. This is a map showing the trail, so you can see the roads again, and you can see that's open to the roads. It's part of the public right of way. It's accessible to the public. This is the amended final plat. So again, you can see that area that would be abandoned. And this part would probably be removed once we actually did the final plat. And this lot would just be put together. This is the original plat. So this is platted back in 1926. This trail has been here approximately 98 years. So this is the trail right here. This part on this end has already been abandoned, was abandoned some time ago. I haven't really looked up the details on that, but it really hasn't been used. And there's another trail down here, same thing, it's not been used either. It has been abandoned though as well. And this is just a close-up of that. And with that, I'll take any questions from the commission.
All right. It says unknown user, but I'm thinking it's Commissioner Wilson. Am I right?
It is, and I am not trying to be stealthy here. I apologize for that. When I logged in, it did say Wilson. So,
Okay.
thank you, Mr. Short. I'm just curious, when it's abandoned, does the property split between each of the adjoining properties, or does one person get it all, or how does that work?
Commissioner Wilson, generally it's wide enough or there are properties on each side. In this case, you're looking at the original subdivision, which it was lot 6 and 7, but that has, let me go back, see if I can go back. Right. This is the current alignment. So if you look this lot right here, this lot number, this is the owner, this is one lot. So in this case, this lot would get all of it because there aren't any other adjacent lots. So yes, that's what happens. It does go back to the owners on generally each side. In this case, there's only one owner.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is Chair Ontiveros. And again, just a general question because we don't deal with abandonments very often. What precipitates this request? Was it done by a property owner, by the county? How does this come before the commission?
So first of all, we generally have property owners that make these requests because obviously in this case, I mean, I can't really tell whether that house is on the trail. It may just be, you know, something with the aerial. But they would just like to, get rid of this because it's not really used anymore. So no one uses it. So once we get that from the owner, they actually pay the fee and we move it down the line. And I contacted the right-of-way agent, and that's at Public Works Department. And the right-of-way agent looks into it and looks to see if the county is going to need it anymore for any purposes. And if they determine that the county's not going to need it, then they kind of, in a sense, approve of it so we can move it forward through the process.
Okay, that makes sense. And Commissioner Wilson, I see your hand again.
Sorry about that. One other quick question, Bob. Is there any public notice required for this?
Yes, there is public notice. There isn't a neighborhood meeting or a citizen participation process or anything like that. We just notice property owners within 300 feet of it before it moves forward to the commission before the hearing.
So we're counting on basically the adjacent property owners to tell us whether or not anybody's actually using that trail or not.
Yes, they can certainly make comments, but in this case, if you look, the trail went straight down through here, and look what's on the other side. This part's already been abandoned. So there.
Right. I was just curious.
Part of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Short. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. So, Mr. McNeely, please go to case number 2.
Will do. Thank you, Madam Chair. So actually case number 2, thanks Zach for already sharing your screen, CUP 2410. It's a conditional use permit request for a campground on over 40 acres just north of the Valley area, actually pretty near where some other campgrounds have been approved and successfully developed. So Zach, if you want to orient the commissioners to this request.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. McNeely, Madam Chair and Commissioners. This is Zach Schwartz, Senior Planner. In this case is CUP 24010. As Mr. McNeely stated, it is a request for conditional use permit for a campground in the general zone. The owner of the property is Inspired Adventures LLC, and the applicant is Isaac Block of CD&E.
Hey Zach, oh, I'm sorry. It looked like your slide wasn't advancing, but now it is. Sorry.
Okay, great. So here's a vicinity map, and this is the Valley Airport in the junction of 64 and 180. North of South Rim Ranches, we have this area that's actually outside of the Valley Area Plan, all general zone properties. And as Mr. McNeely stated, there's at least one campground in this general area, but this is the subject property. It's 4 different parcels in the general zone, accessed by Woodland Ranch Road here and then up Pleasant View Drive. So here's an aerial of the subject property. You can see it's pretty heavily treed with pinyon juniper. And on the east side is Pleasant View Drive. There is one residence relatively close to this property here and hundreds of feet to the south. I should have probably seen if I could get it in this area, but there's maybe a residence here and maybe a residence here. This is the applicant's submitted site plan. So there are 2 driveways proposed off of Pleasant View Drive. And so the majority of the 46 total tent units that are requested are up in this area. There is 1 unit down here, which is actually set aside for the owner of the property, who would also be an on-site manager 24/7. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I hear somebody in the background. If you could just mute yourself, please. So there is quite a bit of buffer distance from the guest occupied tents in this area from the nearest residential property here. But also on this map, you can see there are a number of different sizes and shapes of tents. Some of them having this black symbol here, which is a Valton Hall wastewater system. And then some of them not having that. Those units that wouldn't have that would be close to this mobile restroom and shower unit. But also on the site plan, you can see there are a few spa tents here. Stargazing and yoga platform, some parking area, a welcome tent that also includes a restroom, and then some of the sort of communal recreation area for the proposed campground. And then these are just photos that the applicant submitted to represent what you might see out there as the tent units. So these would be the smaller ones. These would be the larger luxury units, they're calling them. And then this is an example here of the sort of communal recreation area. And as far as improvements, the applicant plans to phase the improvements. So in phase 1, which would happen in the immediate term after approval, should it be approved, would be the road construction, of course, 20 of the smaller tent sites and 10 of the larger luxury tent sites that would have a sink and toilet. One of those would be an ADA accessible unit as required by building code. Also in the first phase would be the welcome tent, all of those things sort of in the southeast corner of the proposed site plan that the applicant was looking to have. And then the communal restroom and shower trailer. And then phase 2 out in maybe 2 or 3 years would be 6 more of the smaller units and then 10 more of the larger units. So that's a total of 46 guest tents. And all of the water and wastewater that's shown on the site plan is proposed as Valton Hall at this time, and that would all be subject to the environmental quality standards from our department. And then the applicants would want to start with off-grid solar, and then later on in the future, as they're able to, they would want to get power from APS to the site. As far as operation, I've mentioned that there would be the owner and managers would live on site. The applicant's narrative stated that they would have quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m. On-site recreation, things in that southeast corner might include just simple games like cornhole, other outdoor games like that. And of course, you saw the yoga and stargazing platform. And then the applicant has stated that they would be interested in taking some of their guests out to hikes and bird watching events offsite. So the things that staff is going to consider for this case is compliance with the comprehensive plan. And again, this is outside of the Valley area plan, so that won't be part of the analysis. There are in section 3.18 of the zoning ordinance specific requirements for campgrounds in the general zone, including unit density, parking, road improvement, etc. And at first glance, the submittals appear to meet all of those requirements, but obviously I'll be doing a deep analysis of that for you in the staff report. And then I'll also be looking at minimizing any impact to nearby single-family residential properties. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. And I think that I did see the applicant. I saw at least CD and E was on this meeting, so I didn't see them involved with anything else on the agenda. And so I'm supposing that's Isaac Block, who might be here for questions as well, if you have them for him.
All right, this is Chair Ontiveros. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for either Mr. Schwartz or the applicant? Commissioner Wilson, please go ahead.
Jack, looking at the Google Earth images of this area, those look like pretty unimproved roads leading up to this, to Pleasant View Drive. Is that going to be a problem with the amount of traffic that many people would create?
Right. So Commissioner Wilson, there is a section in 3.18 of the zoning ordinance that requires the applicant to basically improve the roadway all the way, in this case, to Highway 64 to a standard that's reviewed by our engineering department that would handle a 42,000-pound vehicle. Oftentimes that's compacted aggregate base, but there might be other solutions as well. So
Okay.
the zoning ordinance does anticipate that.
Thank you.
All right, this is Chair Ontiveros. I am not seeing any other hands raised, Mr. Schwartz, or for the applicant. I would like to thank the applicant for being here this evening in case there were questions. I do appreciate that. Seeing none, Mr. McNeely, why don't we move to item number 3, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So items number 3 and 4 kind of go together, but item 3, AM 2401, starts with an amendment, a minor amendment to the 2015 comprehensive plan regarding how we amend the comprehensive plan. And this would be an amendment to remove a kind of an inflexible requirement that your hearing on comprehensive plan updates are only held in October, to free that up to be within 1 year of application. I believe Melissa has a slide she'd like to share on this to explain item number 3 here, and then that will lead us right into item number 4. So Melissa, go ahead. Thanks. And you're in presentation mode. Perfect. And
Thank
maybe
you.
there you go.
Yeah, thank you. So, yes, I just have one slide, and Jess just pretty well summed up what this amendment would be. There is a case number for it where we would actually amend the comprehensive plan, and specifically because it's in chapter 1 of the plan on page 14 under the section titled The Plan, Future Amendments and Major Amendments. So chapter 1, page 14 of the comprehensive plan. And we've talked about this a bit. We brought this to you last month as an idea, and we're moving forward now as an actual item on for your agenda for consideration, that both currently the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance both require that major amendments be heard once per calendar year by the Planning Commission in October of that year. And then it includes an application deadline of May 1st of each year. And the reason for this, and we've talked about this before, is that Arizona Revised Statutes requires counties to bring all major amendments proposed for adoption to the comprehensive plan be presented at a single public hearing during the calendar year the proposal is made. So that is why that requirement is in both the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance. And as just mentioned, it is inflexible in that the October date of every year means that no matter when a plan amendment is prepared, it has to either wait or be rushed into that hearing deadline, or it waits an entire year if it doesn't meet that time frame. So we're proposing to change that to a simple sentence change where all applications for major plan amendments to the comprehensive plan shall be presented at a single public hearing within 12 months of the date of submission of a complete application. And the complete application is important because as you know, by application submittals, if an application is submitted but it's incomplete, it can sometimes take months for that application to become complete. And so that's why that is in there, that once a complete application is submitted, then we will hear it at a single public hearing, any major plan amendments within a single public hearing during that year. So this would create more flexibility in the hearing schedule for major plan amendments. And also in this case, then what the thought is that if, for instance, the comprehensive plan is ready, then it won't get stale necessarily before having to go to a public hearing. Or the flip side would be if it is needing to rush to meet a deadline of an October hearing. So that's some of the rationale behind this amendment, and I can answer any questions.
Ms. Shaw, I'm not seeing any, so why don't you just go ahead and slide into number 4, because they go hand in hand.
Right, and I think that Jess will take number 4.
I can do number 4. So number 4 is easy because it's the exact same thing that mirrors within the zoning ordinance as regulated in Chapter 5, Section 5.13, Item 4, to do exactly what Melissa described that's being amended within the comprehensive plan. So the zoning ordinance obviously is ordinance regulation, and it regulates how the comprehensive plan can be updated. So both of these need to be updated in tandem. And if you had a chance to look at the documents we sent to you, that would be a zoning ordinance amendment that is our absolute priority. Because as you know, the comprehensive plan update process is a project that we have to get done every 10 years, and is our primary long range planning project right now. But because we're kind of opening up the zoning ordinance for this amendment, we did have a list of some other amendments that we do consider not controversial or not substantive. Many of them very just technical clarifications that we would like to send along with this zoning ordinance amendment. I will put out the caveat, though, that the Section 5.13 comprehensive plan update timeline is the priority. So if any of these other amendments are something that are quite frankly opposed or going to slow down the process, we'd really rather not slow down the process and save those amendments for another time, because of all the amendments that are being proposed. None of them are timely or none of them are on fire, so to speak, except for the Section 5.13. So what I'm sharing right now is the document that was sent in your packet, and we list here under items 1 through I believe we got up to 18 items that list a section of the zoning ordinance and a short little description of what is being proposed for amendment. At the beginning of this memorandum, we do have a link where you can go in, actually just basically to our homepage, our department homepage. And at our department homepage, we have a link to our really great software website where we have this amended version of the zoning ordinance posted, and you can scroll through that. You can kind of use this little guide of items 1 through 18 to guide you to find those. Likewise, you can just scroll through and you're going to see bolded and highlight where the amendments are proposed. It is a big document, so scrolling through can get a little bit tedious, but every single chapter had something. So we really had to put the entire thing into our comment website. When you go to our comment website, you can review it. You could feel free to contact me with any questions or comments. And that system, that software, that website is built to where you can make comments right there. And it would be great as commissioners if you identified yourself and added any comments within the document so we can start compiling those. So again, the priority is Section 5.13 taking care of the comp plan update timeline. The rest of these, some of them are very administrative. Some of them get a little bit more to clarifying uses that we deal with on a regular basis. And I would be happy to discuss any of these. So I'd like to start by asking if any of the commissioners went through any of these and have any specific questions on any of these items 1 through 18. And I see, Madam Chair, that that Commissioner Wilson does have his hand raised.
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jess, I was just, I did read through all of these. Item number 4 on your list, which talks about screening of waste receptacles. I know that for dumpsters right now, it's very prescriptive.
Yes.
It has to be cinder blocks. It has to have steel bollards, all of these other things. If we're going to be that prescriptive with respect to dumpsters, are we going to do something similar? Or do we really even need to be that prescriptive at all?
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. And the main impetus of that amendment, of that particular one, was the way it's written. It prescribes that any commercial development is required to have a dumpster. And we know that we have commercial developments in incredibly rural, remote parts of the county where it's impossible to get dumpster service. So those commercial developments are taking care of their waste as required by ADQ, by regulation, by some other means. So the step 1 was clarifying that if you have a dumpster, you have to screen it. And actually, step 2 is our proposed amendment is to be more flexible with how you screen it instead of being so prescriptive, which is actually a general theme that we've tried to head down, is work towards a performance standard, the performance standard being that the thing's screened. How you achieve that is something that could be achieved different ways. Right,
because, in my opinion, providing an opportunity to screen it using natural vegetation or things like that.
Absolutely.
Would be far better. So I just wanted to make sure, since we're changing it and have that opportunity, if we could relax those requirements a little bit at the same time, I think everyone would win. Thank you.
Okay. As a matter of fact, I will scroll right to that one and you can see how.
That's okay. I trust you.
Okay, but please take a look. This is actually a really fun, what I'm showing now, website that you can make comments right into it, and the software actually compiles the comments for us. So we've actually got a press release out to the community through the county communications, letting people know, the public, the zoning ordinance has some proposed amendments. Please go to this website and give comments. So it would be great if you all could give it a test run and see how it works for you. Madam Chair, it looks like Commissioner Best likewise has his hand up.
Yep, please go ahead, Commissioner Best.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Number 13.
Yes.
I had a question about that. And I'm reading it to remind myself. Are we basically reducing commercial landscape standards here? I'd like to know, have some sense of what the real effect of this is. In general, in favor of reducing standards for landscaping. It says many commercial developments are physically unable to fit this on a site. There are certainly many places where existing landscaping is appropriate, especially in rural areas. But I would certainly want to get into the weeds on this, as they say.
Absolutely. And as you all know, our landscape standards in section 4.4 of the zoning ordinance does include weed management and mitigation, and includes firewise standards. But the need under this section was to improve some flexibility, first off, in encouraging the preservation, basically increasing the incentive of the preservation of native landscaping. Many of the projects that come before you, many of the commercial projects that come to the county have some native landscaping on the site, and this would increase the incentive to count that existing landscaping, retention of the existing landscaping for your commercial development landscaping. The other flexibility that was necessary was we had some performance standards on caliper size of trees that are installed and height of those trees, and we found our customers, our applicants, just can't get that size. It's impossible. So we've had to reduce that size. Likewise, we do have some requirements for landscaping of commercial developments that include the perimeter of the building and the perimeter of parking lots on the site, and detention ponds on the site, and internal to the parking lot. And what we found, self-storage projects, if you think of the rows of self-storage buildings that go into a project, and many other projects as well, it was just too much landscaping. There was too much volume of landscaping being required for each of those items. So the simple solution that we found by doing analysis of several of our commercial developments that simply could not fit the landscaping that was required on that site, the simplest solution and the most effective for the community was to eliminate the perimeter of the building. So that would be the landscaping closest up to the building walls itself, but still have all the requirements for their frontages, their parking lots, their detention ponds, their and perimeter of their site. So we've literally had several, particularly self-storage projects, common commercial development in our county, have to go to the B of A, Board of Adjustment, for a variance of this standard when that project is permitted by right and doesn't come to you, for instance, for a conditional use permit. So that would be the long and the short of the updates to section 4.4. Again, I would encourage you to go to this site and scroll and find it, and you will literally see struck what's being changed and bold what's being added.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very sympathetic with all the internal landscaping, external landscaping that the passing public sees. I'm less enthusiastic about reducing if that happens to be on the perimeter of a building and we eliminate it, that might be awkward. So I will dive into that. And next month, are we going to see details on these items, or
Next,
is the link the detail at this time?
It is all provided. So
Okay.
we will respond to comments we receive, certainly. And we will try to provide some based on the comments, and even the comments you're giving us now. So giving me a great idea, Commissioner Best, that we could have a slide that could demonstrate what the changes to the landscape standards, how those will practically go into effect on a site.
Yeah, I have noticed that sometimes the standards seem to require landscaping internal to a project that people outside the project would not see, and I don't care much about that kind of landscaping. It's what the public sees, I think.
Absolutely correct. That's the main thing we're trying to reduce. So we certainly are retaining the external.
Good. Okay, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Mr. McNeely, this is Chair Taveras. I'm not seeing any other hands. Was there more in your presentation that you wanted to cover?
Madam Chair, no, that should do it for item number 4 for public hearing next month. So that would be all of our public hearing items. That would bump us up to Board of Supervisors update.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. So, Commissioners, the next item to be heard by the Board of Supervisors will be ZC 2302, the Deer Park Road zone change that you recommended for approval. That was the one from G to AR4, just west of the Parks Area Plan area on Deer Farm Road. Haven't had any opposition on this case, so we don't anticipate any opposition to your recommendation for approval at the board hearing. Any questions on that item? Okay, and it's not on here, but I would mention that we've gotten on the board schedule for May 14th to give them a comprehensive plan update, just on the process of the comprehensive plan, and specifically to give them the update on the statistically valid survey that you just received today. So if you're around on the 14th and want to listen in on the board's presentation about the comprehensive plan, hear what the board has to say, please feel free to join that hearing. Madam Chair, not hearing any questions on that. Okay, if we bump to Commission and Staff Roundtable.
Yep, please do.
Okay, so Commissioners, we put an item here in talking with, particularly with Chair Ontiveros and Vice Chair Burton. We have scheduled or tentatively scheduled a retreat that you're due as of May, for May 9th. We would like to do that here at our department in our Thomas conference room. And as we've commonly done these, probably have it start sometime in the morning, possibly around 9, and be done by lunchtime, so about a half day. We do have our rather new attorney's office rep, Angela, who's with us right now, who you would be able to meet in person if you're able to make that in person. And she can give you some of your legal refreshers. And one of the reasons to hold this retreat in the Thomas conference room is we could give a little trial run here on how the Thomas conference room is functioning with some of the recent IT updates on how does it feel to be in there using the hybrid meeting system of using the built-in camera, microphones, and screen. And we could even take turns to have people meeting in the room, speaking in the room, and send other members a couple at a time to one of our offices outside of the room to listen from outside, such as someone who's attending a meeting remote, what it would look like and what it would sound like to someone attending the meeting remote. So with that, I will also mention that we have a meeting scheduled with Chair Ontiveros and Vice Chair Burton to tour the board chambers, and that is on April 12th to see what the chambers are currently looking like and how that system is working. And we will be doing that tour with an IT member. So I guess we'll jump back to what we have on your agenda here. For May 9th, we'd like to get a quick survey. I realize we got about 20 minutes left here in your study session time before your public hearing starts, but we'd like to hear in general what the availability looks like for the commissioners we have with us.
Okay, so this is Chair Ontiveros. Now, Commissioner, like I just saw someone give a thumbs up, but I have no idea who that is. So confusing to me. Commissioner Best, your hand was raised. Are you raising it to say that you would be available, or did you have a question?
I had another roundtable issue. I am available that morning.
Okay,
So-
okay. Well, just to keep things going smoothly here, why didn't everyone who is anyone who is not available, please raise your hand. All right, Mr. McNeely, it looks like May 9th will work good.
All right, and we can reconfirm that and discuss it again at your hearing next month on April 24th. And Madam Chair, I
Okay.
know Commissioner Best has an item he'd like to speak on, but when
Yes.
you're ready, I did have one topic that we are proposing that is kind of a topic of late that I wanted to let the commissioners know about as a potential topic for their retreat.
Yes, if you, Mr. McNeely, why don't you go ahead with your presentation, and then Commissioner Best, you follow up after Mr. McNeely.
Okay, so as I already discussed, opportunity to do trial run of what do we have available to us in the way of hybrid meeting space. The other item that we wanted to explore in your retreat is our engagement with the fire districts. We continue to have the fire districts reach out to us, sometimes about the conditions that get put on conditional use permits, or just developments that take place by right in the county. So our interaction with fire districts, which are multiple different districts, they each have their own board. They each have their own, they don't have their own codes. We only have one fire district in our entire county, which has adopted a fire code. The other districts don't have an adopted code, but obviously they all have to work within their districts in ways that they can effectively be the fires for that district. So that's our proposal, to possibly have, if we can get one or more of the chiefs to attend your retreat with you, talk through what are some of the expectations for development within their districts, especially when it gets to commercial development, and how can we work with that within our department as being the planning and zoning and building permitting agency for the county.
Okay, Mr. McNeely, this is Chair Ontiveros, and I think that this is just me personally, but I think it's a good idea. Now, you know that we've got, well, all of us know that we have a lot of campgrounds going in over in my area, Highway 64 headed to the Grand Canyon. It makes sense. I think it would be useful to have Chief Bob Trotter from High Country, because he is relied upon a lot to have to go in and make decisions. So I would just put out that let's invite some of the rural ones too, as well.
Absolutely.
Because I'd like to hear from them.
Thank you for that recommendation. That's a great recommendation.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. Commissioner Best, go ahead.
Thank you. I've got two items, actually. One item is that I talked to Ari Wilder of Camp Colton after our meeting last month. I do a little volunteer donation out there, and she offered to give me a tour out there and said I could bring a friend or two. So if any friends would like to go, when I get a date, we have to wait till the snow disappears. And she's got an opening, but when I get a date from her, I'll probably try to make it late afternoonish so people can attend if they care to. And I'll let Mr. McNeely know, and he can put out a notice to everyone. I haven't been up there in quite a while myself, so it'd be fun to take a tour.
Thank you, Commissioner Best. And if we find out we're gonna have a quorum, that's easy. We're just required to post it 24 hours ahead of time.
The other thing I just thought was cool, so I'd let you know. I got an invitation to comment from the Forest Service in an email, and I'm on some list somewhere. Comment about the wildlife crossings over the highways that they're working on. They've got 3 in the works, and I believe one has been funded south. I believe it's on 17 south of town, and I don't know if it's the Kachina one or one farther south of that at Willard Springs, but one is in the works. And so it occurred to me that I thought back to the case we had maybe 4 years ago, where we had somebody who wanted to split a lot and build a house near Naval Observatory Road, near the existing wildlife corridor there. If you know that area, the train goes by there, and there's an I-40 overpass, and that area is used by wildlife to get under. It's a pretty decent wildlife corridor, and it's really the only one between Flagstaff and Williams. And so Jessica Simmons and I went out there. We walked it. We figured out where the actual trail was, and we ended up approving the lot split, but we kept a building envelope to the west side of the lot, which kept activity away from the actual trail that the animals use. So I was just curious, we're spending $30 million a piece on these overpasses. Are we, and that was not listed as a wildlife corridor in this list. So I called the person who was listed in the email I got, Mike Decter, Sarah Decter's husband, turns out, and he's Forest Service in charge of this, and he didn't seem to have much information about the Naval Observatory underpass, really, but he referred me to Jeff Gagnon at Arizona Game and Fish. And so I gave him a call, and it was good news. He was actually pretty much, as we spoke, he had been working on looking at the Naval Observatory underpass, and he was aware of the challenges, and he had worked with ADOT, and they have made it sort of an official asset of the highway. What had always worried me was if they ever had to redo that overpass. That ADOT's pretty, don't tell ADOT I said this, but they can be challenging to work with, famously. And but it is on their list of assets, and Jeff knew about, there's a little triangle of public land right in the middle of private land, right in the middle of the wildlife corridor, but it's so small. It's part of a lot close by that just ended up that way, I think, when they put the railroad through or something. Not a big bother, but something that should be resolved. Somebody should go and buy that and turn it into public land. And he was aware of the state land to the south, which is also a challenge because state land can always get sold and developed. But he was actually working on it, and he didn't know about what we had done, so I informed him of that, and he was interested to hear that. But I just thought it was a great follow-up to work that we did years ago, and so instead of spending another $30 million, we have a free wildlife crossing of I-40. So I thought you might be interested to hear that. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks for letting us
Yeah,
know.
this
And
is-
Jessica had given me the warning that you were going to discuss that.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and this is Chair Ontiveros. Thank you, Commissioner Best, for that follow-up. Appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, Commissioner Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to back up just for a second to the to the retreat. I've heard two topics that are potential issues to discuss there. I was hoping that perhaps we could, maybe solicit inputs from the rest of the commission as to topics they would like to see discussed while we're having that opportunity. And if there are any that, more than one or two members would like to discuss, have those added to the agenda.
Absolutely.
This is Chair Ontiveros, and I think that's a great idea. Mr. McNeely, why don't you take off on that?
Yeah, we're listening. I'm ready to take notes. So if any of the commissioners have additional topics beyond fire districts and how fire districts are managed and interact with our work, love to hear it. I see Commissioner Best, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Best.
Since you asked, thank you, Commissioner Wilson. I've got dogs barking here. Are you guys okay?
Yep.
We
Okay,
can
good.
hear you.
Yeah, I've got a headset on. I was very interested to see in the analysis earlier this evening about the education of tourists. I think it's something that has been on my mind for a while, really 4 or 5 years since COVID started. We started getting all the campgrounds, and we started putting together ways to help campground owners educate the public, both for the benefit, the added experience for the customer, and also to preserve our forest, which is obviously very high on the list of what people are interested in from what we learned today. So just the general idea of educating visitors, I think is worth a discussion. As I say repeatedly, and I've probably said it here before, we're 2 hours from the fastest growing county in the nation that has 5 million people in it. We're going to see more and more people, and the way we've lost some assets because of overuse. And if the more that we can educate people, the better, in my opinion. So that would be something I would like to talk about. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Best. Mr. McNeely, I am not seeing any other hands raised. What I think would be a good idea is I suspect that maybe some of us might be like, I think this might be a really good topic for the commissioners. If you guys, if a topic hits you and you think, you would like to see it at the retreat, would you guys please email Mr. McNeely if, something pops up later? So, and Mr. McNeely, that I'm thinking that wouldn't be a problem, right?
No, absolutely not. We got
Okay.
plenty of time to put that agenda together.
Yeah, okay. All righty. Do any of the other commissioners or staff have any other issues while we're at roundtable? I'm not seeing any. All right, then how about we take a 5-minute break and start our hearing promptly at 5:30?
Thank you. See everyone then.
Okay, see you soon.
Madam Chair, are you there?
Commissioner Wilson, this is Jess with staff. I'm here.
Yeah, I was unable to get my sign-in changed to something commissioner, but at least it's not anonymous now. So I am RW for references.
It's RW, so it's so we'll be able to identify who you are.
Oh, I see that. Thank you. Mr. McNeely, I am showing all of the commissioners here minus Commissioners Walsh and Towhee. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct. Commissioner Walsh will not be with us. She let us know that she would not be able to attend this evening. Commissioner Towhee likewise let us know that she would be attending at 5:30. We don't see her yet. So as we kick off the agenda, we'll be watching for her. We do have a quorum, so we can move ahead with a meeting. If we see her pop on, I'll try to let you know if I see her before you.
Okay, I would appreciate that. She doesn't happen to be an unknown user right now, does she? Commissioner Towhee, if you can hear me and you're here, can you please identify? Okay, I think we've got, all right.
And Madam Chair, I'm only seeing one, and I can see names on everyone. So I'm seeing all commissioners and a name associated. We do have one phone number, a 928 number participating, and I'm pretty sure because staff helped that person get into the meeting. So I'm pretty sure we know who that participant is. So I feel like we and feel free to check in with me anytime, but I feel like we have a good handle on who's in the meeting. And I'll let you know if when and if Commissioner Towhee pops in.
Okay, thank you. And I do agree, we've got a quorum. It is 5:30 p.m. This is Chair Aunt Tavares, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'm going to start by reading the meeting rules and procedures. So, welcome to the March 27th, 2024 meeting of the Coconino County Planning and Zoning Commission. Cases will be heard in the order they appear on the agenda. Following the staff presentation, the applicant and/or the applicant's representative may address the commission. As an applicant, if you agree with the staff report and have no additional information, please feel free to keep your comments brief. Any relevant comments are welcome. Following the applicant's presentation, I will make a call to the public. If you wish to address this case, please state your name and address. We ask that your comments be limited to 3 minutes or less. Comments must be relevant to the case. Please address all comments to the commission. And no matter how strongly you may feel about the case, all comments must be polite and courteous. After all interested public have spoken, the public comment portion will be closed. Discussion will then take place amongst commissioners. Decisions of this commission regarding any zone change or preliminary subdivision plat approval are referred to the Board of Supervisors as a recommendation. All other case decisions are binding unless appealed to the Board of Supervisors. If you disagree with the commission's decision, you have 15 days to appeal. Please contact staff at the Community Development Office for appeal procedures. Due to the virtual nature of this meeting, I will be doing a roll call vote of the commissioners to ensure accuracy for the record. Please mute your speakers and turn off your camera. Also, please do not use the comment function for discussions. It is strictly for the use of communicating with staff if you are experiencing some kind of problem. With that, thank you all for joining us this evening and actively participating in our county planning. The first item on the agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. So I would like to ask everyone to please stand. And Mr. McNeely, if you would lead us.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All righty, let me get set back down. The second item on the agenda is the approval of the February 28th, 2024 minutes. If there are no corrections, additions, modifications, or revisions, I will accept a motion and a second.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes of February 28th, 2024 as presented and compliment them for being so detailed.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Wilson and a second by Commissioner Ruggles for approval of the February 28th, 2024 minutes. All in favor, please say aye. Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
okay, Commissioner Ruggles,
Aye.
Commissioner Best,
Aye.
Vice Chair Burton.
Aye.
This is Chair Ontiveros. I also vote aye. The motion passes unanimously. The first item on the public hearing agenda this evening is case number CUP 23-040. This is a request for a metal storage container and staff is recommending approval. If any commissioner wishes to discuss this case, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, I would now like to ask if there is anyone in the public that wishes to address the commission on this case this evening. Okay, seeing none, I will accept a motion and a second for approval of CUP 23-040, please.
Madam Chair, I move we approve CUP 23-040 as submitted with conditions from staff.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Wilson and a second by Vice Chair Burton for approval of CUP 23-040. All in favor, please say aye. Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Did you get that? Aye.
no, well, we did then. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Ruggles,
Aye.
Commissioner Best,
Aye.
Vice Chair Burton.
Aye.
This is Chair Ontiveros. I also vote aye. The motion passes unanimously. Second item on the agenda is case number CUP 24-007.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While Kelly Bingham from our staff is getting ready to share her screen here, this is a conditional use permit request for forest product processing and a cottage industry for a woodworking business in AR5 agricultural residential 5-acre minimum zoning in the Timberline area. And again, this is in District 2, Supervisor Vasquez, and I know Kelly Bingham with our staff is presenting this case. So Kelly, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, you could give the commissioners your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. McNeely. Previously, we had discussed potentially hearing the DRO case prior to this one. Do you still want to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, Chair Ontiveros discussed that, and we're going to leave them in the order that they are in.
Excellent. I'll go ahead and get started then. All right, is everyone able to see my screen?
Seeing it great.
Thank you. This is CUP-24-007. The property owner and applicant for this case is Ryan Wolfinger in Flagstaff, Arizona. The zoning for this parcel is AR5, agricultural residential with a 5-acre minimum parcel size. This property is only about 2.3 acres, but it is legal non-conforming, meaning that the parcel was created prior to our zoning ordinance. This request is for a conditional use permit for a cottage industry and forest products processing. The majority of the business and the applicant's time is spent doing wood processing in an indoor garage, and that would be covered by a cottage industry, but there's also outdoor storage and outdoor equipment usage that would be covered by forest products processing. So that's why there are two. Here's a vicinity map. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see Highway 89 running north-south. And then running east-west, you can see Copeland. This property is just north of Copeland. Here's an aerial photo of the site. Just so that you're aware, this is an old photo. This is farming and greenhouses at the rear of the property. That is no longer there. The house, the barn and shed, and the garage are still on the property. I'll show a site plan in a little bit to show you what it looks like. This application was the result of a code enforcement process. It was a complaint of commercial operation of a wood processing business. And there were issues stated related to noise, fumes, fire concerns, aesthetics, and property values. This proposal would include 2 log piles, 2 slab sheds, 1 drying area, 1 parking area, 2 kilns, an indoor soundproof workshop, screening fences, and 2 saws. And the only employee would be the applicant, so only one at a time would be able to run. And the combined usage of those saws would be 1 to 3 hours per week. Here's the applicant's site plan. After the presentation, I'm happy to zoom in on any portion that you might like to see in more detail. You can see the parking area in between the house and the garage/workshop. The kilns are in these squares here, if you can see my mouse circling. The mill is right near those on the southern end of the property. The secondary mill, that from my understanding is not operating yet, is just behind the shed and garage. This is also where the skid steer is currently stored. There are 2 slab sheds at the rear of the property, along with a wood drying area. And then to the north of that, there are 2 log piles. And you can see some proposed screening here along the north end, and then just south of that here. And then one final one by the parking area. Oh, and actually, I'm sorry, I misspoke. There's also one along the back side of the property here. Here's some photos of the indoor workshop. You can see it's a garage. The applicant has actually put in insulation in the windows to prevent any light or sound trespass to the north. And here's some photos of the outdoor storage and processing. In the top left here, you can see one of the slab sheds. When staff visited, everything was relatively neat and tidy. You can see the log piles in the top right. The skid steer is shown in the bottom left. And you can see Commissioner Ruggles and the saw on the bottom right. One of the main concerns from this operation was the sound and the fumes. The applicant did their own sound study, and the highest reading that they got was at the south property line at 63 decibels, which makes sense because the saw is very close to the southern property line. But that property owner actually wrote a letter of support for the business, said it didn't bother them. So the staff focused all of their measurements at the north property line where there were the most complaints. Because of the wind, it was a little difficult to get an exact reading because the tool that we use measures only ambient noise. However, staff was estimating sound levels at about 30 or 40 decibels at that northern property line. The zoning ordinance typically requires a noise level of 50 decibels for many uses, and staff would typically recommend that for forest products processing in a residential area. However, typically what we've seen in the past is 9 to 5 operations, and this is only 1 to 3 hours per week. It's not a full-time thing. So therefore, staff believed that it would be okay if it was 63 decibels at the property line to the south. And standing outdoors in the wind, staff did not observe any strong fumes. However, that was one of the complaints that we heard from the opposition to this case. Fire was another major concern for some of the neighbors. Summit Fire actually came and walked the site with the applicant, and they suggested a couple of things to help make the site more fire safe. They suggested a buffer zone that would be clear of flashy fuels around all outdoor wood storage, no milling or on red flag or fire warning days, keeping a fire extinguisher and water on hand, and then storing wood 30 feet from any structures. The applicant also suggested spreading cinder over the wood chips, although this was not Summit's recommendation. The applicant held a neighborhood meeting on January 25th at the property. 20 neighbors attended the meeting out of the 42 that were invited. Issues included noise, fire risks, aesthetics, and property values. And there was some general concern over whether this was appropriate for the neighborhood. Since then, staff received 8 letters of support signed by neighbors. 7 of those were included in the packet. 1 was emailed to you earlier today. Supporters indicated that they had not noticed adverse impacts, but we also received 2 letters from neighbors who were opposed to the project, and those were also included in the commission packet. Here's a comment map showing where all of these comments came from. Staff thought this might be helpful in visualizing where the most impacts were being felt. The subject property is in blue, and then the green properties wrote letters of support. The red properties wrote letters of opposition. The applicant took the concerns very seriously, and he looked into screening walls. He said he would follow the direction of Summit Fire. He suggested working with neighbors to find appropriate times to run the saw so that it would disturb them less. He said he would only use outdoor equipment from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and he suggested reducing the amount of wood stored on site. In the staff analysis, we were able to find that it was supported by the comprehensive plan and the Donny Park area plan, so long as the applicant is only using the saws between 1 and 3 hours per week. Many of the neighbors supported the project, and the conditions were drafted to try to help address some of the concerns of the people who were opposed. With appropriate mitigation, staff was able to make the findings of fact for this forest products processing and cottage industry. Here are the conditions of approval. This was also in your packet, but I'm happy to go back to these. Here are the findings of fact for a conditional use permit. And overall, staff recommends approval of CUP-24-007 with the recommended conditions. Are there any questions from the commission?
Ms. Bingham, this is Chair Ontiveros. One question that I have is when we were going over the summary of what's going on here, this sounds like something my dad would have going on, okay? So my question, but for his own purposes, you know what I mean? Just putting around and working in his yard. And so my question for comparison, so I can understand this, if this were not for the commercial use, is this a use that someone could just do in their yard, much like I described my dad would do?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Chair Ontiveros. Technically speaking, yeah, if someone wanted to run chainsaws or leaf blowers or work outside, do their own personal woodworking, that would be permitted by right. And any kind of dispute over it would just be something between neighbors. But because there is a business here, that's why we're discussing it.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Best, you're up first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions. What would the normal setbacks be on this property?
Sure.
And are they in compliance at this point?
They are in compliance with the setbacks according to their site plan.
Okay,
Not sure
that's
if I
all,
could
that's
tell
all
them
I need.
accurately. Okay, good.
The other,
Commissioner,
one other question
I'm
was,
sorry, Commissioner Bass, go ahead.
In the narrative, they say they're gonna add a 10 by 20 shed. Do we want to be involved in that?
As far as planning and zoning is concerned, that was something that was included in the proposal. It would be approved under this conditional use permit. As far as building is concerned, if there are any utilities, they would need to get a building permit. However, if it's under 200 square feet with no utilities, they would not need to get a permit for that.
Okay. And just as long as they met the setbacks, that would be okay.
Exactly.
And okay, I do have one other condition, but we could talk about that a little later. Thank you very much.
Okay, Commissioner Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Bingham, when you were doing the sound testing, that was for the mill that is existing on site today, correct?
It is. It's the one that's currently in use. My understanding is that the other one is on site but not being used right now. I did not
And-
actually hear that one.
Okay, and when you were doing that testing, was the sawmill running or was it actually cutting wood?
My understanding was that it was cutting wood. You'd have to ask the applicant to verify because we were on the other side of the property. But when they speak in a moment, they can confirm that for you.
Because I believe based on the photos, the mills are powered by, it appears, gasoline and perhaps diesel engines. There's a skid steer that you had mentioned, but I also saw in photos a forklift. Is that part of the operation?
It is. My understanding is that that one is quieter and has less fumes than the skid steer.
Okay. And a bigger picture question, one of the comments that we saw from the neighbors said when they called P&Z staff, they were told that a cottage industry is not allowed to adversely impact the neighbors. Is that actually written someplace, or any ideas where that might have come from?
Sure. If you'd like, I can pull up the zoning ordinance
No,
and show you the exact.
No, I trust you. Just a quick answer is all I was looking for.
Yeah. So the cottage industry is intended to, it's a higher intensity than a normal, home occupation where you might just be sitting at your computer all day. So we know it's more intensity than that, but it's not supposed to be impacting people to the point where they can't enjoy their own property.
Okay. And finally, the staff analysis you report, with appropriate mitigation, this forest products processing business meets the finding of fact. The appropriate mitigation being the fencing, I guess. There is no mediation that's occurring with respect to the sound or the fumes that were the objections from the neighbors. Is that correct?
Sure. So the mitigations were intended to be the conditions that we put on it today. The sound from what we found was below 50 decibels at the northern property line and in an extremely limited window. That window is in the conditions of approval. Should they exceed that, they would be out of bounds, so to say, with the conditions of the permit. They would not be allowed to do that, and they would need to come back for another conditional use permit. So that's the limit on the sound. The fumes, unfortunately, are a little difficult to condition because we can't measure them. So that's why there wasn't any condition on the fumes in the report.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Bingham, I am not seeing any other hands raised for questions for you. So I'm going to ask if the applicant or the applicant's representative would like to address the commission this evening. I would like to ask you to please state your name and address for the record. And I would also like to ask you if you have received the staff report, if you've read it, and if you agree with the conditions. And I just want to let the applicant know that you can be very honest with this commission. If there is something here that is just bugging you and you do not agree with it, please be honest with us and let's have an honest analysis and conversation. So with that, I would like to invite the applicant, please.
Hi, this is Ryan Wolfinger, address of 12225 Gunman Road, Flagstaff, Arizona, 86004.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wolfinger. Did you have a chance to get the staff report, read it, see the conditions, and do you agree with those conditions?
Yes, I do. And I did
Okay.
have the opportunity to read it.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm going to ask if any commissioners have questions for the applicant, Mr. Wolfinger, at this time. Please raise your hand. Okay, Commissioner Wilson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Wolfinger. I'm envious of your occupation. It looks like that would be a lot of fun. But I would like to confirm whether the sound tests that were conducted by the county were done while you were actually sawing wood or just with the mill running.
Yes, those sound tests were conducted while I was actively cutting through a log. I want to say I did 3 passes so that they could try and get accurate readings, because there was a bit of a breeze that day. It wasn't, super windy by timberline standards, but yeah, I was cutting wood. So
excellent, thank you.
Vice Chair Burton.
Yeah, I was just curious. So it's my understanding that you have both a forklift and a skid steer. And it sounds like the skid steer is a little smellier. I'm just wondering what the age of that equipment is.
yeah, so it's a 2006. So it's kind of pre, DEF emissions. I think
That's
one
right.
one of my considerations that wasn't put in the site plan is actually moving a good majority of the log piles more towards the south end of the property, because my adjacent neighbors to the south and east have been in favor of my business. And I think that's where a majority of the issues have arisen, is over just the diesel smell. And so I think most of that comes, if I'm engaging in milling activities, I'll drive the skid steer kind of to the north end of the property, pick up a log, and then drive to the south end. So I think if I move most of the material to the south end, then that'll put a greater buffer between the area of activity and the north end.
Okay, great. Thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you. Commissioner Best.
That pretty much answers my question too. The wind is going to generally be coming out of the south and southwest, I think. So that northern neighbor seemed to be bothered to the point that it was affecting her happiness. So if you can commit to doing what you just described, that I think that will take the pressure off there, and the fumes would have a lot more real estate to disperse in before they get to her house. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Best. I am not seeing any other hands raised by commissioners. So at this time, I'm going to ask if there is anyone in the public that wishes to address the commission on this case this evening. If so, please raise your hand.
Madam Chair, this is Jess with staff. I don't see any hands raised, but I know we do have one participant who's at a phone number. I believe it's this 928 number that we see in the meeting. It's the only phone we see in the meeting. And I see that this person is unmuted. So
Okay.
we could probably invite that person to speak. And I am now seeing another guest with a hand raised.
Okay. I am not seeing, I think our screens are different, Mr. McNeely. What I'm showing is an unknown user, and I think that might be the one you're referring to. I'm going to go to that individual first. I'm going to ask the individual to please state your name and address for the record, And please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Mr. McNeely, would you please time? And
Will
with
do.
that,
Madam Chair, the one we're seeing is I'm showing it as Adam Kisser, excuse me, Aaron Kisser, and Aaron's currently with a hand up and muted. So Aaron, you'll need to unmute to follow the chair's instructions and make your comments.
okay. All right, let's go ahead and start with the unknown user with the 928 phone number, please.
Okay. And there you go.
Can you hear me?
We hear you
Yes,
perfectly
yes,
fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, I am the neighbor that is immediate north to this property. And
okay,
I
this is Chair Ontiveros. Let me just interrupt real quickly. Before your comments, could you please state your name and address for the
Okay,
record, please?
okay. Sorry, my name is Linda Ezadorsky. I live at 5575 East Starlight. I'm immediately north of him. My house was infiltrated with diesel fumes to the point that I could not breathe. This was in August. Like I said, I live north. We get the southwest winds that blow northeast. So now I didn't know where the county was with all of this because I'm the one who filed the formal complaint against him because I had to put up with noise like you wouldn't believe, smells and vibrating from his saws. So how I got through last summer, every time he started up his forklift, I closed my windows. How many of you would want to close your windows in the summer because of somebody's business? I don't know how much more I can say about this, but the fire danger bothers me extremely since we've all in this neighborhood have gone through the tunnel fire, and one spark can ignite that entire property, and I would not have a home. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. The other individual that I see's hand raised is Aaron Kaiser. Please go ahead, state your name and address, and then your comments will be limited to 3 minutes, please.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's Aaron Kaiser. I live at 12315 North Eagle Road. I'm just north of Linda. And I mean, yes, the noise is certainly a consideration because yes, most of the time the wind is coming out of the south, and so the noise just carries all the way through Linda's and towards our property. The other thing, I don't know how old that photo is of that log pile, but it's I can't remember it being that small at any point recently. And then the other concern is that I had heard you, maybe it was Ms. Bingham mention something about the only one employee or whatever else, and that Mr. Wolfinger is doing his own deliveries and things like that, and that just is not congruent with what I've seen. There's large trucks that come in and out of here, dropping off trailers full of logs that I've seen on more than a few occasions. So it just feel like maybe some of the report, it was thorough, but feel like it was maybe a little bit of a misrepresentation of what has actually occurred. And then of course the fire concerns as well. I mean, we're lucky our house didn't burn down during tunnel and pipeline. So that also is a concern of mine, at least. I think that's all that I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kaiser. Mr. McNeely, help me out here because I don't want to miss anyone. Are you seeing someone that I'm not?
Madam Chair, I'm only seeing Mr. Kaiser who just spoke. His hand is still up, so you could put it down. I'm now seeing, I just saw one pop up.
Yep,
It's a Terry Morin has her
got
hand
it.
up.
Yep, I see that. Ms. Morin, if you would like to state your name and address for the record, go ahead, please.
This is actually Douglas Morin. I'm Carrie's husband. And we live at
Okay.
5620 East Atkinson in Flagstaff.
Okay, go ahead and just keep your comments at 3 minutes.
Understood. So I have several concerns, much of which have been brought up: fire, fumes, noise. But a couple of topics that and if I missed it, please forgive me. Road maintenance is something that I think we all contend with. And we, try to rally together to put funds in to keep the roads so they're passable. Curious as to what kind of projection there is for increased traffic as a result of this.
That was a question.
It was.
Okay. I do believe that is a good question, and I'm actually going to ask Ms. Bingham to address that question, and let's be specific. We're not going to let this go down rabbit trails. Ms. Bingham, address just that question.
Thank you, Chair Ontiveros. May I pull up the staff report and share my screen?
Please do.
Thank you. All right. Can everyone see this okay?
Yes.
Okay. So what I heard from the applicant was that they would use a trailer to haul 4 to 6 logs every 2 to 3 months. And the number of customers, I believe, was 2 to 4 per day.
Okay, thank you. Would that be, this is Chair Ontiveros, sticking strictly to this subject. Would that be what an approximate household would have traffic-wise in this neighborhood? Or do you find it to be above and beyond?
Chair Ontiveros, staff interpreted this as a normal household traffic level, keeping in mind that people haul OHVs, trailers, things like that all the time. Staff did not see this as any higher than a typical household.
Okay, thank you. And that answers the question. Okay, Mr. McNeely, do you see any other hands raised? Oh, I do.
Yep.
It looks like Sabine, would you please go ahead?
Hi, my name is Sabin Hernandez Jr., and I live at 12385 Daniel Way. I am to the north of Mr. Wolfinger's property. And my main concern at the community meeting that he had was the fire concern, and that is because of the way the winds blow out here. My house would be one that I could probably potentially smell fumes. I am more in fear of fire danger due to the amount of dry wood that he has on his property. All the dry logs and everything else. And so I just wanted to voice my opinion on this, saying that I am against this. So that's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Mr. Jean, Mr. Morin, could you please put your hand down? You have had your opportunity. Was there actually, Mr. Morin, let me ask, was there anything else?
There is,
beyond
and also,
the road?
just to comment quickly.
Okay.
I'm in real estate, and one of my concerns, both short and long term, is the impacts on property values. And what I've discovered in my profession is that when you have any type of zoning alterations, increased foot traffic as a result of a business in a residential area, that it has adverse impacts on property values. So that's just a comment that I am absolutely opposed to it for a multitude of reasons. Probably that reason most of all.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Moran. Gene Warner.
Hi, my name is Gene Warner. I reside at 12445 Daniel Way, to the northeast of Mr. Wolfinger's property. I echo all of those comments in concern of fire, fumes, the disruption of our quiet little community out here that, in my opinion or my understanding, is zoned as residential. It's not zoned for a business of this sort. And my question would be, well, I have two questions. One is, I'm not sure if or a statement maybe. I'm not sure if the assumption that 4 vehicles per day throughout the work week to a residence stipulates normal drive on these roads. That's the first thing. Most of us go in and out, if we do 1 or 2 times a day, maybe. If you're going to work and coming home, it's 2 trips. So I'm not sure how 4 trips or four trips per person coming in and out of a business that constitutes normal activity. Spaced over the whole week, extrapolated over 52 weeks, that's a pretty big number of folks coming and going. And again, I think that the properties up here are zoned residential, agricultural. They're not zoned for small businesses such as this, and I am in complete opposition of it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Warner. I would like to ask if there is anyone else at this time in the public that would like to address the commission on the case this evening. If so, please raise your hand.
Chair Ontiveros, may I correct something
Yes.
that I said earlier?
Please
I want to
do.
clarify. I had said 4 to 6 per day. It is actually 4 to 6 per week. He said sometimes 2 in one day. So I just want to make that clear. That is why staff assumed it to be normal for a household.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Ms. Bingham. That's helpful. Mr. Warner, you've already had your time to speak. This is the public comment portion, so it's not a dialogue. So I'm not going to call on you again because you did say that was it. So Mr. Green, Jim Green, if you would please state your name and address for the record and go ahead, please, and address the commission. I think you're muted, Mr. Green. Mr. Green, could you please unmute so we can hear you? We cannot hear you at this time. Mr. McNeely, is there any way to unmute someone?
I'm thinking the exact same thing, Madam Chair. No, I do not have a way right now to unmute this participant. Okay. If any of the other staff members do, Shar, if you're able to unmute Mr. Green, go ahead. But yeah, I'm going into the options and it's not giving me the option to unmute him.
Okay. Mr. Green, this is Chair Ontiveros. And again, I just want to let you know that you are muted. And so we are not able to hear you. Could you please try to unmute if you can hear me?
Madam Chair, could we suggest to him how there's a microphone icon that should be near the top right side of your screen? If it has a slash through it, that means you're muted. If you click on it, it should unmute you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Wilson. All right, we are not able to, okay, we're not able to hear Mr. Green at this time, so I'm going to have to move on. It looks like we have Glenn and Nancy. Oh, yeah, if you would like to go ahead. Glenn and Nancy?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I sure can. We sure can. State your name and address and your 3 minutes will begin.
My name is Nancy Milnes at
5615 East Atkinson Road. And we are directly north of the applicant. And we also went to the location and saw it. And there is so much wood chips on the ground, literally inches. And that's only in 6 months from the date that we were on the property, that I don't know how in the world that will not be a fire hazard. We have wood chips that came from our horses and we couldn't even put them out. When the fire came through, our horse pasture was on fire constantly because it would keep on starting a fire. So that is one of the biggest things for us, is a fire danger. And we are directly north, which means that the fire danger would be going towards our house or any of us that is north of them. And that is, we are opposed to it for that reason, because even if they talk about covering it with cinders, he's going to be making more and more and more of the wood chips. And that is right there a big danger.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mills. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share with the commission while you got time?
Yes, I really, there is, with the different skid steers, the skid steer that he had going on, there is 2 different ones, and it was very, very loud. He also has a second saw that he never turned on for anybody, and it's there. We don't know why, but he has multiple sheds of wood with just a cover on them. And these wood piles, the whole property is just a tinderbox. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Best, I see your hand raised. We're not at commission discussion now, but do you have something that would be relevant right now?
Yes, if any neighbor could tell us whether the noise issue is the 3 hours a week of the outside sawing, is the noise issue limited to that? Or is there more of a noise issue? Is some of the inside work also bothersome to them? Thank you. I realize I'm a little out of order here, but I don't know how else to get that information except talking to neighbors.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Best. What I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat the question and ask Glenn and Nancy Milne, your hand is still raised. Do you have an answer to Commissioner Best's question that he posed right now, which is the noise limited to the 1 to 3 hours a week, or is it more than that?
I'm sorry. I didn't know how to unraise the hand.
Oh, you're fine.
So,
but you don't, okay, so you don't want to talk anymore. Okay, got it.
No, I'm there. Thank you.
Okay, you did it. Okay, thank you. I don't see any hands raised, Commissioner Best, to answer that question. So that's the best that we can do at this time. Mr. McNeely, would you please help me look for anyone who wishes to address the commission if I'm not seeing them?
Will do, Madam Chair. I was just talking to Shar from staff. She was trying to help Mr. Green get unmuted, and I'm not seeing. I am not seeing.
Oh, there, I see it.
Yep, there we go.
I see him down at the bottom.
And he is
Mr.
unmuted.
Green?
Okay.
Yep, Mr. Green, please
Yes.
go ahead.
Yeah, this is Jim Green, 12194 Daniel Way. We are to the immediate east of Mr. Wolfinger's property. And we've been there very close to his sawmill and operation for somewhat over a year now. And I have to say that the noise issue is a non-issue as far as we're concerned. It simply, we just don't, we live probably within 150 feet of his fence line and haven't had any problem at all with the noise levels, whether from his mill or from his skid steer. The question of fire, I feel like the inspection by Summit Fire District should ease the concerns about that, but that's because I believe in their technical analysis. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Green. Mr. McNeely, I am not seeing any other hands raised. Are you?
No, Madam Chair, I'm not seeing any other hands.
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and close it to the public at this time and open it up at commission level. Commissioner Wilson, would you please begin our discussion this evening?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a little concerned that what we're hearing from different groups of people doesn't seem to be consistent, that the initial testing done by staff versus what the neighbors perceive seem to be inconsistent, and that's presenting some challenges. And I also wonder, at what point does a cottage industry become more an industry than a cottage? Because a sawmill, as much as I would love to have one and be able to use it, might be the thing that is just over that line for me, based on what we've heard from the neighbors tonight. So I've got some thinking to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Wilson. Commissioner Williams.
I have some thoughts similar to what Commissioner Wilson just spoke of. You know, the incongruency between the testing and what some of the neighbors have expressed that they've experienced, which I can relate to if that is the case. So yeah, it does seem like it might be kind of pushing the bounds of, you know, without a fancier building or a more contained everything inside, which would definitely be more industrial. But it seems like just mitigation efforts by the applicant is kind of what everything's relying on. So I guess I want to see what everybody else thinks.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ruggles.
Thank you. I'm going to address some of the technical concerns here. I was present with Ms. Bingham. I also brought my own sound level meter, which, by the way, is a self-calibrating device. Original calibration is sufficient that it meets the National Bureau of Standards calibration for sound meters. My readings agreed with hers from her cell phone app. So I have no dispute with the readings that she has presented to you. The other thing is that the north end of the property, when we were there, well, let me back up one thing. The ambient sound level in that area at the time is very, very much in agreement with sound level readings I have taken further uphill towards where I live. And on a moderately breezy day, the readings that were presented to you said sound level about 37. It'll vary quite a bit with the wind speed. Now, I did a calculation to see what the level of the sawmill itself, when running, would be at the north property boundary, and that turns out to be approximately 37 to 39 actually. And that would contribute very little to an ambient sound level reading of 37, as a for instance. And it's going to be well below 50. Wind, now some of the figures that Ms. Bingham showed, wind could push the reading combined all the way up to, I believe it was 87. Just wind by itself in an area that is more heavily forested than that, about 20 miles an hour or so, will push it up to 63 without anything else contributing. So the wind has a major effect on sound levels. So that being said, I also took a look to see if there was any data on the Wood-Mizer LT40 that is being used by the applicant. I did find one forum where somebody got a sound reading of 89 dB at Sawmill, which is consistent with the 63 dB that the applicant got at the property line. So all of the sound level readings so far seem to be quite consistent with each other. The other thing is that as an example, I took a look at the one of the properties that is to the north, and that was 1,000 feet to corner to corner. And when you do the calculations for the sound level based on the measurements taken, the numbers come out in the minus category, which means that it would be imperceptible to human hearing. So that is theoretical now. On a windy day, sound, as some people pointed out, is something that will carry the sound. It's not perfect when you do theoretical measurements. The other thing, fumes, probably no worse than other somewhat more rural areas of the county where people have a backhoe, skid steer, an older diesel pickup. You're going to get that. So I do not think it is any more severe than what you would get in other parts of the county in rural areas. However, that kind of depends on the time that the vehicles with the skid steer and of course the sawmill are operated. If it's only 1 to 3 hours, as stated, it should be rather minimal. But I'm going to leave everyone on the commission with that right now. Other than one more comment, I tend to look at Summit Fire's assessment of the fire danger as being accurate. It is dependent upon the anything that would feed ground fire, which I can attest to the fact that ground fire is one of the problems that led to the problems we had further uphill where I live. It missed us by 60 feet. And most of the spread of the fire was a result of weeds, other ladder fuels at lower levels when we had some fairly high winds. So I'm going to leave it at that right now, and I'm interested in what some of the other commissioners have to say about this before I come up with, well, a decision on what I think. So thank you.
Oh, okay, Commissioner Ruggles, because this is Chair Ontiveros, because you did do a site visit. We have had some concerns about fumes. Did you witness the, I guess you would call it vehicle that emits these? And what is your take on it?
Okay, when Ms. Bingman and I were on the north side of the property, the wind was predominantly from the southwest. So we did not, at least I did not notice any diesel exhaust fumes, nor did I notice anything from the gas engine that runs the sawmill. If the wind is predominantly out of the south, which does occur, I could understand the possibility of that occurring. So, but at the time we were there, the wind varied predominantly out of the southwest, and I did not notice anything.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Best?
Thank you. This is a tough one. It would help me a lot if we had an answer to the question of whether it's going to be noisy 3 hours a week or all the time from the neighbors. Definitely am in favor of codifying in the conditions 3 hours a week between 8 and 5, which is in the applicant's discussion. And if that's the case, that's not much. It would help a lot if the applicant could step forward with some help on the fumes, whether there's a different kind of fuel or different muffler or a different vehicle. Because the fumes could be extremely aggravating and apparently are to at least one person to the point of making it uncomfortable to be in their house. So is there any mitigation that any of us or the applicant could think of? I think those are the big issues, and let's keep talking. Thank you.
Madam Chair, you're muted.
Yes, I am, and now I'm not. Commissioner Best, I would like to draw your attention to the recommended conditions of approval. I want to keep things moving forward here, and Ms. Bingham, could you please pull those up for us? All righty. Now, if we look at condition number 1, it does limit it to 3 hours per week. And so, Commissioner Best, you are suggesting operation of the sawmill shall be limited to a maximum of 3 hours per week between the hours of 8 and 5.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bingham, can you make that modification while we're talking about this, please?
Yes.
All righty, thank you. And we're going to go ahead and move forward. Commissioner Tohi.
Good evening. I know I have some hesitation around this conversation with this conditional use permit. I think that the areas on traffic, smell, and fire are real things, especially when you think about the neighboring houses are stationary, and the whatever they hear, whether it be traffic, smell, or fear of fire, that's always it's one of those things that is gonna be a stationary thing. It's gonna be there. When we talk about certain things being usual in the area, those are more, I guess, moving type situations where traffic could be moving in various areas of that area or in any area. The smell is something that maybe people might have on varying basis depending on what kind of machinery it is, or a vehicle, or those kinds of things. I think that there's things that we still need to iron out. As far as this sound and decibels are concerned, where it has been mentioned that it's not a perfect measurement when it's a windy day. So just having those thoughts in mind, I think that I would like to just kind of see what else, where this conversation could go, as far as just kind of addressing those things that the neighbors are really concerned about. So that's all for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Tohi. Vice Chair Burton?
Yeah, I go into it thinking one thing and then I start thinking another, and back and forth and back and forth. The whole reason that I asked about the date on the skid steer originally was because the law went into effect for 2010 and newer that they had to use DEF, which more or less eliminates diesel smell. I was really hoping that the answer would be 2010 or newer, but I don't know how to mitigate diesel smell in older vehicles. I don't know if it can be done, if it's cost prohibitive. I don't know about that, but that for me, that's the biggest factor because I have an extreme sensitivity to smells. So I have complete empathy over that particular issue. I feel like 1 to 3 hours a week is not an unreasonable ask for somebody to be able to run a saw. I have neighbors that run all kinds of different equipment in my area, and we're on much smaller lots. So, but I mean, it is for personal use, but they're still using the same type of noisy equipment. So I really don't think that the 1 to 3 hours is an unreasonable ask to be able to do that, and then everything else being contained within kind of a soundproofed work area. I do like the idea of him relocating things to the south part of the property so that he's not having to drive the skid steer up by the north property. I think that would help immensely. I was looking at pictures to see if maybe a privacy fence along the north side of the property might help. That may help with sound mitigation. I understand all the readings and all the laws, but you know, there's a difference between the sound may not be more than 40 to 50 dB, but because of the type of sound it feels worse than that. So for me, some other type of potential sound barrier like a fence would be something that I would prefer to see, but I don't know if that's something that's necessarily achievable in that area because of for whatever reason, animal migration, whatever, because that would not be wildlife friendly, but it would only be one side too. As for the fire, I trust the fire department when they came out and took a look at the property. This type of service does help reduce overall fuel because it's putting the wood to use. It's reducing some of our forest fuels. So I do appreciate that. And I also appreciate the fact that we live in an area that needs additional income. A single income just doesn't cut it anymore in Flagstaff. So I don't believe that we can take property values into account. I feel like that's something that we've been told we have to completely not think about, if I remember correctly. So I'm honestly, I'm still weighing all of this because I do have legitimate concerns, but I also think a bunch of those concerns have been addressed. And I also want to remind all the neighbors that these are firm conditions and it is a conditional use permit. And you have the ability, if you properly document, to come back to the county and state a case that he's outside of the conditions put in this conditional use. So it's not like you don't have a recourse should we decide to move forward and approve the conditional use permit. And the conditional use permit in here is stated that it's only for 3 years. So it's kind of like a trial basis. And the county does take your feedback into account should conditions be violated. So I want to reassure any neighbors that should this commission feel that we should move forward with this, it's not like a one and done. So those are my thoughts right now. I really can't say at this time whether I'm going yay or nay.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Burton. This is Chair Ontiveros. I have listened to the staff presentation. I have listened to the applicant's presentation this evening, wherein he did state that he would be moving the products to the south side of the property. That in and of itself is going to improve this situation. And he was going to be doing that. So I believe that that might even be something that we could condition so that that actually is done. So the issues that were brought up were the fire, the noise, the fumes, and the traffic. So on the fire, on condition number 4, I do want all of the neighbors to know this. So I'm going to read it for the record. It said, because I want the neighbors to know that this commission is taking fire very seriously. Condition number 4 states, the applicant shall follow the direction of Summit Fire to reduce fire risk associated with business activities. Outdoor milling shall not take place during red flag or fire weather warnings. A fire safety and emergency response plan shall be approved by the fire chief. A letter confirming approval by the fire and emergency service provider must be submitted to community development. For me, because that condition is completely unambiguous, that alleviates my concern on the fire. I'm going to move next to the condition, to the noise issue. We have neighbors in support of this, and we have neighbors in opposition to this. And I do know that Commissioner Ruggles is very, what would I say? Very good about relaying in an objective fashion what the observation was. So I do understand the issues brought up, that it may not be perfect, but his readings, and he did explain the equipment that he was using and the calibration. And although it may not be perfect, to me, this is hard because you have neighbors saying one thing, but then you have actual measurements being taken that are saying another. And for my decision making, I am going to consider, I'm considering all of it, but the actual reading that was an observation that was given by Ms. Bingham and Commissioner Ruggles and another neighbor, I think the noise issue, to me, it's not that big. It's 1 to 3 hours per week, and it is 8 to 5. And if it's that big of an issue, we could even say Monday through Friday to make sure that we really limit to the degree. On the traffic, Ms. Bingham did provide clarification on that, and once she did provide that clarification to me, that brings it to what a normal household would be. There is no way. I did hear I heard Mr. Kaiser's comments on the property values. we cannot consider that. We have no way to quantify that. So we can't take that as evidence to base our decision on. So I do want to say that I am in support of Commissioner Best's suggestion and modification that we have already added. And the other thing, if the other commissioners are uncomfortable, I'm even wondering if maybe shortening this, and I'm talking really shortening to a 1 year, because, and I want the applicant to hear this as well, and also all of the members of the public. Because if this goes as it should go with the mitigating factors that we've talked about, with the products being moved to the south, that's going to help with the fumes, reining in the hours for the noise. If we shorten the time period, that's going to give any of the, I believe that might, I'm trying to find a balance here, that might relieve some of the heartburn for the unknown for the commissioners. I would like to know how others feel. And I would just say to the applicant and the public that if it goes well, this can be approved administratively if the renewal is done in time and there are no complaints. So those are my take, but I can tell you that I can make the findings of fact to approve this. And that's where I'm at. So I'm going to go ahead and go back up to the top and run through the list as we did before, starting with you, Commissioner Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With some further consideration, I've got some additional concerns, I guess. The first one being that staff is recommending approval, recognizing that the sound levels are going to exceed what we have normally expected as a 50 dB limit at the property line, because the neighbor to the south right now is supportive. The neighbor to the south could change, in the next couple of months and not be supportive. And so I have concerns that we're making exceptions because of a particular neighbor's opinion to rules that we have pretty much enforced across the board in most of our past decisions. There's three issues here: the sound, the fire, and the fumes. While I fully respect Ms. Bingham and Commissioner Ruggles' work, we've heard from too many neighbors that sound is an issue for it not to be. And, we live in a rural community where we're here in large part because we like quiet. And I've heard from too many neighbors that the sound is an issue. The fact that the amount of wood and the amount of sawdust, the amount of chips for the fire risks, I think exist regardless of what Summit Fire may have recommended is in their FireWise documents. When you're sawing wood, if there happens to be a nail in it, there's a good chance it can create a spark, in addition to ruining your blade. And one spark would be all it would take. All of us out here in this area are extremely sensitive to that. And I don't think we can just discount that because Summit Fire says a couple of things might help. If we're going to limit the hours that we allow the operation of the mill itself, it sounds like, based on what the neighbors have told us, we should probably limit the hours for the operation of the equipment on site also. The skid steer, the forklift. Right now, in addition to the change that Commissioner Best recommended to condition number 4, I would say, well, first of all, I'm not sure what fire weather warning means in that. There are fire weather warnings all the time of various degrees, and so we're not being very specific there, and I don't think that's helpful. But I would say that if we do have any kind of fire restrictions in place, that would be another time that we should probably consider limiting this type of activity that could put us at additional risk. And ultimately, I wonder if the applicant wouldn't just, if his life wouldn't be better to find someplace else that he could spend 1 to 3 hours a week that isn't surrounded by homes. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Wilson, while we're talking about, you're suggesting a modification to number 4. What modification would you have it say on the weather, on the fire weather warnings?
Well, I guess I would say during red flag, or anytime fire restrictions are in place. And fire weather warnings to me doesn't mean anything, but fire restrictions do. They're put in place by the Forest Service in the county, and if they are, that's the time when we need to be especially careful.
Okay, so you would have it say outdoor milling shall not take place during red flag or
periods when fire restrictions are in place.
Okay, got it. Okay, all right. Do you have anything else at this time, Commissioner Wilson?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Williams.
I do actually like the suggestion of the 1 year CUP with the ability to have an administrative renewal if there's no complaints. Because I do feel like this is something that is permitted through a conditional use permit. It seems like the applicant is willing to do whatever it takes to keep the neighbors happy, and without actually trying all these things, we won't really know any of these changes. So I think the 1 year, I do like the 1 year suggestion. And I think with that, I could support it just to give it a shot, because if it's not going to bother anyone, it is, you know, we have conditional use permits for cottage industries. And I appreciate people, you know, trying to work and live here. So, but I also, you know, wouldn't necessarily want it right next door to me if I could smell diesel fuels all the time and it was noisy. So I think with the conditions we have in place, I would be willing to be in favor of it on a 1 year, initial 1 year term.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Commissioner Ruggles.
Thank you. There is one thing that I left out earlier, that during the time that I was there with Ms. Bingham, I do have to state that in any conversation with the applicant, there was no more covered than what is in the narrative that he has presented for this application. I believe it is legally necessary for me to state that because it was ex parte conversation at the time. Okay, now we got that out of the way. The other thing is I am fully in favor of a 1 year term for the CUP for this. The reason that the 3 year term is in the code is typically that will get problems sorted out so that the commission upon renewal can make a decision on whether or not to renew or not to renew. In this case, I think the 1 year makes far more sense, and we can certainly do that. I'm in agreement with Commissioner Burton's comments also, and I'd like to say something about noise, and then a brief comment about the fire potential. Okay, noise, yeah, it can be pretty subjective sometimes, because one of the things that, although we measured sound levels below 50 when the wind died down and with both the skid steer running but not operating, and the sawmill operating as well, that the frequencies, as Commissioner Burton mentioned, become far more important. So some people are far more sensitive to that than others. So it is very difficult to quantify what the human ear is going to hear. And it may sound like I'm undermining my own measurements, but when we have a stated previously with use permits that it has been 50 dBA at the property line, well, that leaves out a lot of those problems that you could get when you have, as for instance, lower frequencies, a band with lower frequencies, which carry further than higher frequencies. Now, the internal combustion engines, the gas engine on the sawmill, not so much in terms of lower frequencies, but this may be part of the problem with the noise from the skid steer. And it is diesel, okay, and that's going to be the case. However, I think the applicant's telling us that he would be willing to move the storage area for the logs that are towards the northeast corner of the property somewhat. Further south would help with this quite a bit. So I would be in favor of going with something in the conditions that may make that a little more specific, that he'd be required to move storage areas as close as possible to the south side of the property. Back to Summit Fire's analysis. One of the things I did take a look at, which I did talk about, was what you get with ground fire there. Now, it is not overgrown to the extent where you have a tremendous amount of grasses and weeds that are much higher than a lot of it I saw was probably maybe 1 to 2 feet at most in a few places. Probably one thing that in terms of fire-wise that wasn't mentioned is the trees on the property should be limbed up. Fire-wise only calls for limbing those trees up approximately 6 feet, which is completely inadequate. If you limb up trees, it should be equivalent to what you would get if you had a ground fire through forest, and that tends to be 12 feet or more. So that might be something to think about here. With changes like that, in a 1-year term, I can certainly make the findings. And one other thing that I will suggest that may be important to the applicant, we have had a similar case in the not too far from Red Lake about a year and a half ago with a similar operation, only they were doing wood splitting, which added to the noise. But one of the recommendations that I suggested Mr. Short look at in that case were sound walls, which could, if there is a problem, can be used to mitigate the sound that is transmitted to the north of the property. I'd also like to note that the property owners directly to the east stated they had no problem with noise also. So I'm going to leave it at that and see what everyone else has to say after this.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Ruggles. Commissioner Best.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm good with a year. I would want it to be a full hearing. Because it may be that the complaints, I don't quite know how complaints work. I think it may be that complainants would have to prove that conditions are not being followed, and it could be that conditions are being followed and the smell and noise is still too bad. So I would just want a hearing in a year. I would want condition number 1 to say 3 hours per week, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Wood storage would be moved. A new condition 7, which or probably 6, and then number 6 becomes 7. Wood storage will be moved to the south 1/4 of the property. And I would hope that in the coming year, it seems like the applicant has had very good relationships with some neighbors, and is, you know, the kind of person who wants to do the right thing. Maybe that's a little subjective, but seems like that's the case. And it could be that sound walls would help. It could be that, you know, 2 machines could be traded in for one that was newer and didn't stink, or there could be some way to mitigate the smell of the 2 machines that are there. So that's where I am at this point. 2 conditions and a year.
Ms. Bingham, would you please record or modify or put in, revise the condition as stated by Commissioner Best right now, please? So it would be adding
Go ahead, Madam Chair.
yeah, it would be adding a 7th condition, but it would actually become condition 6 with the time frame moving to condition 7. Could we do that? Get that up in red so all of us can look at this. And Commissioner Best, I want to ask you while we're in discussion, what is your thoughts on Commissioner Ruggles' suggestion of limiting the trees to 12 feet?
I haven't seen the trees, so I don't know how tall they are. If they will sustain that and survive, I think that's a very good idea. I'd be fine with putting a condition. I have
Or just
looked at
adding it, yeah. Just adding it to number 4.
Yeah. I mean, I looked at the property just through the county parcel map, and it didn't seem to be heavily wooded. So generally speaking, a tree by itself is not the problem. It's when you have a group of them. But yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Okay, Commissioner Tohi.
Thank you. I agree with the recommendations that were made. I really like the part about the 1 year. So that is one that really makes me feel better and not as hesitant. I also agree, let's see here. I would like to keep, I like that we're specifying Monday through Friday. So that's fine with me. And then I like the fact that we're also specifying, I believe, that we're making sure what items are being moved to mitigate the sound and smell. So I think those are the things that make me feel less hesitant. And then also just assuring that the neighbors still have that 1 year to see how that works, and see if everything is the way that it needs to be as far as what their concerns are regarding, especially with the smell, traffic, and sound. I mean, fire.
Okay.
I think those are all concerns. Sorry. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Tohi. Vice Chair Burton.
I'm good with everything that we're talking about adding. I think the 1 year would give the neighbors a little sense of relief, the fact that they could come back. And it's kind of like a trial to see how it goes. But I would also want some kind of not just the same, because people can complain just to complain. So I kind of feel like there needs to be some kind of measurable evidence that conditions are not being met. But that's something we can discuss in a year. So yeah, I'm good with the changes to make, and with all the modifications, I feel like I can approve this.
Okay. I see Commissioner Best and Commissioner Ruggles' hands raised. Commissioner Best, please go first.
Condition 6, could we say the log pile shall be moved to the south 1/4 of the property? Or maybe just the south 1/4 of the property would be less awkward, but does everybody understand exactly what that means?
Yeah, let's make sure that we do. What, to accomplish your concern and the concern for the neighbor, what would be the most unambiguous way to state it so there's no misunderstanding?
So if we're going north to south or south to north, you can go from the south property line 25% of the way toward the north property line and no wood storage beyond that. So the log pile shall be moved to the south 1/4 of the property.
Okay. Okay, got it. So, okay. I believe that verbiage is correct, Ms. Bingham. All right, Commissioner Ruggles.
Yeah, one last comment, although I remember going out to the property and looking at the trees and how high they were. So coming up with any amount that they would have to be limbed, I think would be a little bit arbitrary. I think if we want to say something like that, a 10 to 12 foot limbing up where practicable, or that's somewhat higher than Firewise, but nevertheless, I think that my observation is where I live, and when both the pipeline fire and the tunnel fire occurred, that there were parts of our neighborhood up here in north of Copeland where that would have saved some properties. It might not have been too many, but one would have been enough if people had trees trimmed up and eliminated lighter fuels, which is what just every fire district in northern Arizona where we have forested areas recommends. So,
okay, so what we're going to do, Commissioner Ruggles, is we're going to address condition number 4. So Ms. Bingham, would you please make the following modifications? And this, Commissioner Wilson, I'm going to have yours placed in there now as well. So first sentence, the applicant shall follow the direction of Summit Fire to reduce fire risk associated with business activities. Outdoor milling shall not take place during red flag or periods when fire restrictions are in effect. Commissioner Wilson, does that capture your concern?
Yes, ma'am, it does. Thank you.
Okay. On the same, because Commissioner Ruggles' concerns are dealing with the fire, we're going to keep it within that paragraph 4. Commissioner Ruggles, would you please state for Ms. Bingham, and just put this at the end of it, Ms. Bingham, would you please state, Commissioner Ruggles, what you would like her to put there for the limbing of the trees?
Well, I'm trying to think of the most equitable way of dealing with this for the applicant. And I think that tree limbing should be performed in accordance with Summit Fire recommendations. Because some of those trees, an arbitrary statement of limbing height is going to be too much for some of them. They're not all that big. in that particular area, especially along the road in front of the house. So
Okay.
if the applicant goes along with what Summit Fire recommends in terms of limiting to eliminate fire potential, I think that would that's only reasonable.
Okay. Okay.
And
Chair Taveras, if I may say
yes,
something really quick.
sure.
I would question if this might be getting into a legally gray area, just in that the trees themselves don't have anything to do with the business. They're not near any of the wood piles. As far as I observed, maybe Commissioner Ruggles saw something different than I did. I just want to make sure that we're staying only within the business and not putting undue burden on the applicant that other neighbors would not have to do for their residential property.
well,
Okay, Commissioner Ruggles, let me ask you this. If going back to Ms. Bingham's comments right now, if we removed what she just wrote, which is tree limbing should be performed with Summit Fire recommendations, if we removed that, do you have a sense, or what would I say, like a level of comfort that Summit Fire is going to be looking at that, and we could just leave the condition as is with the modification per Commissioner Wilson, and
well,
let Summit Fire look at that?
okay, here's two things about that. One, this is a conditional use permit, and as such, the standards and the conditions that we can impose are going to be different than what you would have for just plain residential use in accordance with the AR5 zoning. So I think that there should not be a problem if you said that limbing in order, and we've gone through this before years ago with similar Firewise requirements, where we have required thinning around the boundary of the property, and that did not pose a problem as far as what you can do with a conditional use permit. Matter of fact, this was something that it was a conditional use permit for the city of Phoenix for a camp they operate. And I think that sometimes it is necessary to state something like that so that when someone comes out and looks at it or gives advice on what to do, not everything always gets covered. You want to state that this is fairly important, and the idea is to get them to say, yeah, we definitely have considered this when we give the applicant a recommendation. And that's my thinking on it. Yeah, I
Okay,
don't think there is a problem legally with saying because it is a conditional use permit, some of what the standards we may impose have got to be different than they are for residential.
Thank you, Commissioner Ruggles. I do believe that what you said is accurate, and leaving that in there is simply just kind of a heads up to Summit Fire to say, listen, this is something the commission was concerned about. They're going to be the ones, they're the experts that are going to be making the recommendation, because fire is we have heard from the neighbors that they have a very serious concern about fire. And so me personally, I don't have a problem leaving it in, and I do believe Mr. Commissioner Ruggles is correct that these are conditions for a conditional use permit. So, Commissioner Ruggles, do you have anything beyond that before I move to Commissioner Wilson?
Other than to say you summed it up rather well, and because of where I live, my position on this has got to be pretty clear, because if we have another one like this, I won't have a place to live. So thank you very much.
And I understand. I understand. Commissioner Wilson, your hand is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Ms. Bingham makes a great point. Our concern isn't the existing trees on their lot or the lots surrounding them. Our concern is really relating to what this cottage industry brings in addition to that, which are these piles of wood and the accumulations of sawdust, wood chips, whatever. And I think our community would be much better served if we were focusing our efforts towards those things, those new potential sources of risk, and not on the existing trees that, across next door, on the lot next door, those same restrictions won't be there. So what's the real value in those? If a fire started there locally, yes, maybe it wouldn't get up into the canopy, but there's not that much canopy in that area anyway. It's already thinned out quite a bit. It's those fast moving ground fires that I think most people in that area are concerned about. And that's what the additional risk that this industry is bringing is all that wood that's stacked and near the ground, and the sawdust and wood chips. If we really want to make a difference trying to mitigate that, that's what we should be addressing, is my first thought. Second one is, if we're going to say Summit Fire, it's actually Summit Fire and Medical. And the last thought is in item number 7 right now, we changed that to the 1-year time frame, but it still says a period of 3 in text, so that need be changed to 1. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to get down there to that. By a show of hands of the commissioners, if you disagree with Commissioner Best's suggestion that he would like to see this come back before the commission, rather than being having an allowance for administrative renewal, I would like you to raise your hand. Okay, I'm seeing Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yes, you agree.
I was just raising my hand in agreement with Commissioner Best's suggestion.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I thought
gotcha.
that's you. Sorry, I thought that's what you asked. So
No,
never mind.
It's okay. It was if you disagreed with it, but you're fine. You have made it clear now. So for the record, no hands are raised. So Ms. Bingham, would you please change condition? It's going to be condition number 7 now to read: this conditional use permit shall be valid for a period of 1 year, to expire March 27th, 2025, period. An application for renewal shall be submitted before the expiration date of continuation of the use is desired beyond this date. This is Sharon Taveras with these modifications as we stated, as are here. In my opinion, I feel like we have taken into account the concerns of the neighbors, and have addressed those to the greatest degree possible. I believe we've also been fair with the applicant, and in fact, he was even the one that made the suggestion of moving the products to the south of the property. I believe that we have reached a balance in what we have come up with in the recommended conditions of approval. Especially that it be limited to 1 year, and we will actually see this again. So to the neighbors, if have some, like Vice Chair Burton said, if complaints are going to be made, make sure that they are documented so this commission in 1 year knows what we're dealing with, because this is kind of a test run, if you will. I would like to, at this time, I realize this is a little bit out of order, but I would like to ask the applicant, the conditions that have been revised. You've seen them, you've heard the comments and the discussion. Do you agree with those conditions?
Hi, this is Ryan Wolfinger, 12225 Gunman Road, Flagstaff, Arizona 86004. I do agree with those conditions. one of the questions I was going to ask is the sawmill is currently located at a friend's house in Donny Park. So I guess I was considering, you guys are putting this into effect today until this time next year. I'm kind of wondering if there's times where I need to use the mill more. Maybe I'll just move it over to his place for that time frame.
Okay, and Mr. Wolfinger, of course, I certainly can't advise, but these are, I guess the point that I'm making here is that these are the conditions of approval that are going to be attached to this use. And we'll be talking again in 1 year. And so if you do operate outside of the conditions, the neighbors will tell the commission that that is in fact what has gone on, and it will be an issue upon renewal. So I'm just going to leave it at that and say use wisdom in your decision making on this. Okay.
Correct. Yes. I part of the reason I was asking is because the sawmill has an hour meter on it, so I didn't know if you guys are wanting, how we quantify that, or so I guess that could be a discussion for another day, but anyways.
Well,
yes, I agree to the conditions.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Wolfinger. Okay. So, I want all of the commissioners to carefully look at the conditions, at the modifications that have been made, specifically to 1 to 4, adding condition number 6, and then to number 7. If any commissioner is in disagreement with this or feels something needs to be tweaked a little more, please raise your hand. Commissioner Wilson?
I'm just reiterating what I said the last time, and that is the additional source of the problem here is the new materials on site. And this isn't addressing, nothing in item 4 right now addresses the depth of the sawdust or the number of wood chips or the total number of board feet of wood or any of those things that the CUP is going to allow. That's the source of the problem, or the potential new problem, and we're not addressing it. So just
well, what would you
repeating
okay, Commissioner Wilson, what would you have it say to address your concern?
That's a difficult question to answer, not having actually been on site, but what we heard from both Ms. Bingham and I think Commissioner Ruggles and then some of the neighbors was that, there's a couple of inches deep of sawdust. That's something that probably shouldn't be allowed to accumulate because it does pose additional risks that weren't there before this cottage industry. So, as far as the storage of the raw materials and then the finished products, that makes sense. You have to do that as part of this cottage industry, but the byproducts, the risk, the things that present risks, probably shouldn't be.
Okay, and you don't believe that in condition 4, where it states that the applicant shall follow the direction of Summit Fire, etc., that leaving this to Summit Fire, which they're the fire experts, they're going to go out there, they're going to look, they're going to see what the situation is. Because a fire safety and emergency response plan has to be approved by the fire chief. So would not the fire chief address that?
Summit Fire has been there already once, and this was not addressed in their report. The issues I'm identified were not addressed in the report that they issued from the first visit. So,
okay, so let me
no,
ask
I'm not
you-
confident that
this.
would be.
Okay, so let me ask this. Commissioner Ruggles stated basically a heads up, if you will, to Summit Fire to say, hey, these are things that the commission is concerned about. So when you go out and look, make sure that you look at this specific thing. Do you want to list in there the increased ground? What would it be called? The increased
I don't know, the waste product
sawdust?
of, yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, it's difficult to
As basically a
quantify.
heads up to Summit Fire, that when you go out and look, the commission wants you to look at this specific thing, very much like the tree limbing.
Right, and I believe Ryan would want to do the same thing anyway, because, you know, it's his house. He lives there. He doesn't want a fire. But apparently that hasn't happened. It didn't happen from Summit's first. So if we added something in there to talk about how to effectively manage the waste product that's generated, and reduce the risk of fire from that, I think that would be an important thing to do, because that's what we're really worried about here.
Okay, so let's have Kelly go ahead and give Ms. Bingham the verbiage that you want in on number 4. That way all of the commissioners can look at it right in front of us, so we all are very clear and on the same page.
Okay, Summit Fire and Medical should provide guidance to the applicant for safe and effective storage / disposal of any waste product generated as a result of these efforts or this industry.
Okay, and I want all of the commissioners, yeah, let's let her get it on there. And then I want Commissioner Ruggles, I do see your hand raised and I'm going to get to you in just a second. But I'm going to ask if you could put your hand down now, and I'm going to ask if any commissioner has any, okay, so it's going to say, I'm going to read this for the record. Summit Fire and Medical should provide guidance, or do we want to use the word should? Boy, here we go again. Shall instead of should. Commissioner Wilson, I think that shall would be the better word here.
Sure.
Okay, so now
we
it's
can't,
going to,
except that we can't give direction to Summit Fire and Medical. We don't have that authority.
okay,
What we
how
can give
about
direction to is the applicant.
yeah,
So
how about
the applicant
like
should
how we
follow
have-
direction provided by Summit Fire and Medical for the safe.
okay, that I like that. Okay.
Could you say that one more time, Commissioner Wilson?
Oh no, I was afraid you were going to say that.
Sorry.
The applicant should comply with the recommendations from Summit Fire and Medical and then, okay, yeah.
For safe disposal of waste materials from the industry.
Yeah, generated on
Okay.
site. Generated on site then. Yep.
Industry. Okay, so I'm going to read this for the record. The applicant shall comply with the recommendations from Summit Fire and Medical for safe disposal of waste materials generated on site. If any commissioner is in disagreement with that, please raise your hand.
Should it say byproduct instead of waste materials? I'm getting into semantics at this point, but
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's fine. Plural on that, Vice Chair?
Yeah,
byproduct or byproducts.
yeah, I like byproducts because there could be many different types of materials produced from this. Yeah.
Okay, so the applicant shall comply with the recommendations from Summit Fire and Medical for safe disposal of byproducts generated on site. Okay, Any commissioners in disagreement, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, I believe that we have a set of conditions that we're ready to move forward on. But Commissioner Ruggles, I do want to go back to you because your hand was raised before I asked you to put it down before I took the question vote.
Well, since we're still leaving trees in, I would like to at least say something about why, and that is that if a fire starts and it is not on site, and given the direction of the wind, that could be a real problem, because what I observed, very simply because I do site visits to look at this stuff, that if you have a fire off-site with a southwest wind and there's a sufficient bit of ground fire, it won't take much with conditions like we had uphill here to light those trees off. And some of them that are not close to the house are not trimmed up very far from ground level. So, and there's plenty of other combustible material that if you start one of those ponderosas on fire, that you've got a pretty good chance of lighting that off or having burning embers go further up to the north and east and endanger the neighbor's properties as well. So that's my rationale for that. And I would like to keep that in there. And by the way, I completely agree with Commissioner Wilson on his request for an addition to that.
Okay. All right. This is Sharon Tavares, and I do believe that we have come to a place where we're ready to move forward with the motion in a second. And I have a very good level of comfort that we have thoroughly listened to the neighbors. We have thoroughly listened to the applicant. We have thoroughly reviewed all of the concerns and taken all of the issues very seriously. So it's for a one-year time period. We'll see this again in a year. And I hope that it works because it serves a very valuable purpose to the community in taking care of, you know, some of this lumber that we need to process. So I'm looking at it very, very holistically here. So with that, I will accept a motion in a second. Commissioner Tohi?
Sorry to put a last minute situation in here as far as questions. Did I hear that the applicant, if he needs more days to run the machines, that he would move off-site to Donny Park and then storing chips somewhere else in Donny Park? So I guess that's a concern to me, because moving a business to another place that may not have a CPU. Thank you.
Yeah, he did indicate that if it goes over that 1 to 3 hour mark, that which it didn't sound like it was going to be a lot, that he could do it elsewhere. And that, I think that was maybe another reason that I did want to have this approved, because someone could do this in their backyard if they wanted to. The only reason it's in front of us is because it's commercial. But if this was somebody's hobby, we would not be placing these conditions upon there at all. So I hope I answered your question, Commissioner Tohi. Did I, or is it still out there? Because I want everyone to feel comfortable about what we're doing here.
Well, I think you answered the gist of it. I just do have a concern that if it is deemed as a CPU for this purpose, and then having to move it someplace else because they need more hours, I think it's not, I guess there's a hesitancy about that too. All right, thank you.
Okay, and Commissioner Tohi, that would be something that would, I guess, in a way, self-correct. Because if it ended up somewhere else, in somebody else's backyard, so to speak, we're probably going to end up right where we are right now. And because we got here through a neighbor complaint. So with that, let's go ahead and move to a motion in a second, please.
Okay, I'll go forward with a motion on this. I move to approve CUP 24-007 with the modified conditions as stated by staff.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Ruggles, a second by Commissioner Williams for approval for CUP 24-007 with modifications to the conditions in the staff report. All in favor, please say aye. Commissioner Wilson?
Nay.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Commissioner Ruggles?
Aye.
Commissioner Best?
Aye.
Commissioner Tohi?
Aye.
Vice Chair Burton?
Aye.
And this is Chair Ontiveros. The motion passes with Commissioner Wilson voting nay. The next item on the agenda this evening is case number DRO 24001.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This case is the Northern Arizona Riding Stables Covered Arena. It is DRO 24001. Okay, so in this case, let's see, this one here. Oh, here we go. Okay. In this case, the property owner is Sabe Ranch LLC of Long Beach, California. The applicant is PJ Gustafson of Scottsdale, Arizona. Location of the property is 3090 Old Muds Highway in Mountain Air. Property size is 9.32 acres. Zoning is general, G. And the use of the property is an equestrian center and horse boarding. This is the request and some DRO background on the same page. So the request is the design review. That's a DRO application for a commercial structure covering a riding arena. And I wanted to go over a little background for where DROs come from for new commissioners and commissioners who haven't heard this in a while. There are several areas in the county with area plans that are subject to specific policies and regulations in this case. Some examples of those are Donny Park, Timberland, Fernwood, Belmont, Kachina Village, Parks, Mountain Air, and there are others as well. So a number of these, most of these that I just mentioned, except for Parks, I believe, are under a design review overlays, and that is where special design considerations are applied to industrial, commercial, and multifamily developments. So they don't apply to single family developments or duplexes. And in this case, the subject property is in the Mountain Air Plan area. And as a commercial structure, it requires a design review or a DRO application. So this is a map of that area. You can see it in blue. This is the Mountain Air Plan area. It covers, this is the more dense area of Mountain Air, but it goes out quite a ways. The subject property is over in this area somewhere. You can also see the DRO that applies to Kachina Village over here in purple. And this is a vicinity map showing the subject property. You can see it here along I-17 right across from Kachina Village. You can even see that this is the top of the riding, not the riding stables, the stables here, the boarding stables for horses. And this is an aerial photo. Again, you can see the stables for boarding horses. This is the area proposed to be covered. There's another large arena over here, and this one is not proposed to be covered. It's just this one at this time. So here's some background on this particular property. It is an equestrian center and horse sporting, and that was originally approved in 2003 through both the CUP and DRO process. The uses on the property include horse boarding, RV parking, equestrian events, seminars, and riding lessons. So it's a very active property for horses. The applicant recently came in with a building permit. They applied for this cover in the existing arena, and that's when staff identified it required a DRO because it's commercial use in the mountain area plan area. This is a site plan showing the subject property. You can see the subject property here, the riding arenas, and the again the horse boarding facilities. And then this shows the cover that would be over the riding arena. This is the rendering of the arena. Like I think I said at the study session, this was originally proposed to be white. That didn't seem quite appropriate. I thought it might show up quite a bit. So the applicant has proposed to color it brown instead. These are just some pictures from the site from the previous DRO. This is the sign. This is some of the boarding facilities. More of the boarding facilities. And this is the arena that is proposed to be covered. If you look over here, you can see this is Interstate 40 coming through right here. This is Tovar Road, I believe, Tovar Road right here. And this is over into the Kachina Village area. And this is a picture from Google Earth this is the visibility of it from I-17. So you can see the other arena that won't be covered right here. And this is again, those horse boarding facilities, and that the arena would be right here, the covered arena, the cover over it would be right here. So to approve a design review overlay, a DRO application, the commission simply has to determine that it is consistent with the Mountain Area Plan design guidelines. And I've listed all those in the staff report. They're also, of course, straight out of Mountain Area Plan, so you can see them there as well. So there are no findings for a DRO. It's just, is it consistent with the Mountain Air Plan design guidelines? And with that, staff recommends approval of DRO 24001 with the recommended one condition. And with that, I'll take any questions from the commission.
Okay, Commissioner Wilson.
Mr. Short, I see in the staff report that you're recommending approval despite the fact that the structure exceeds the 30-foot design guidelines. Is there a reason that extra 2 feet 8 inches is necessary? That seems like that's a really big horse.
Commissioner Wilson, in this case, I believe, and the applicant can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that this building it's something that you order, and it's designed this way at this height. And staff looked at it, and we didn't really see any reason that 2 additional feet would be important, would make it look that much different. So we felt it was appropriate to go ahead, and you also have to keep in mind that these are design guidelines. They're guidelines, so certainly something that's not too significantly outside of those would be acceptable.
Is 30 feet the standard for a residence, or is it 35?
Actually, in the general zone, it's 40. It's 40 feet, so
okay,
it's quite a bit taller than this.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Best.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question is landscaping. It's a really giant structure very close to the highway. So I was hoping we could maybe transplant some 50-foot ponderosa pines or something. Do we have no landscaping standards here at all, or?
Commissioner Best, our landscaping standards refer to the use, not the zone. So in this case, it is a commercial use. It did require a conditional use permit. And with that conditional use permit, the landscaping standards were waived, or, which is often done. As you can see, let me go back a little bit here. You can see on this property are quite a few trees. There isn't anything going to be tall enough, obviously, to break, to screen this particular structure. But if you look back at this vision of it, you can see it would be over here. It would be a pretty tall brown building, not taller than a typical house could be there. I've been by here many times and haven't really noticed this that much. So that we typically, in this case, it was already approved through the CUP process. What the commission would need to do is determine that it's consistent with the design guidelines, which does talk about landscaping. So as you probably know, often at the county, it's been the natural landscaping has been approved because it's natural ponderosa forest. In this case, there's some meadow here, of course, too, and there are also arenas. So that's something the commission could consider. I just can't think of anything that would like screen this particular structure. It's pretty large.
Yeah, it would literally have to be a transplanted ponderosa pine, which.
Yeah, like you're saying. I don't think they transplant at that size very well.
No, I don't think so. From the look of this picture, some of them are looking like they're going to die anyway.
Yeah, they do.
There. Yeah. Well, let's give that some thought and see what other people think, and maybe the applicant could say something. I mean, if you did plant some trees on the corners of the building, it might help in 15 years. How tall would you say that existing building is? That's probably only 15 feet, right?
Yeah, it's 15 feet or less, something like that. It's not very tall.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Best.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised for questions for staff. So I'm going to ask if the applicant or the applicant's representative would like to address the commission this evening. I would also like to ask the applicant if you have received the staff report with the one condition and how you feel about that. And again, be honest with the commission. And we can certainly have a discussion. Please state your name and address for the record. And with that, please go ahead.
Hi, guys. Thank you for your time. This is PJ Gustafson with Schultz Development, 7890 East McLean Drive, Suite 1, Scottsdale, Arizona, 85260. Want to thank you guys for hearing this out. It is the metal riding arena. We proposed matching colors to that existing building you can see there on the screen. Based on the comments we received from Bob, we adjusted to brown. So to better shield the existing building that the colors were not agreed with. So at this point, we have no landscaping plan, just what's natural around it. The construction should not disturb much of anything outside the building footprint. Other than that, that's about it. And yes, we did receive the paperwork and we do agree with it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gustafson. Mr. Short, I did see your hand raised. Did you mean to do that?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to correct something, and maybe I'm mistaken, but the building that they showed originally was white. So I guess we could go back to it. See if I could do that this side. So it was white before, and unless I missed something, because green would certainly be an acceptable color. And as and you can see the possible colors of this building, green is one of them. And that may be something that blends more with the ponderosa trees that are behind it.
Yeah, and I may have misspoke. The plan was for the steel structure to stay a primed gray color and for the roof to go white to match the existing.
Okay, right. And I believe green is it is one of the colors that are possible. And I think that's in the staff report, attached to the staff report for this particular building. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I think there's 10 or so standard colors, and then you can start to pay the extra money for custom. But yes, the owner is definitely in agreement with a color that the commission may find more suitable to blend in with the surroundings.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Short, and thank you, applicant. I'm going to ask if there is anyone in the public. You know what? Did I ask the commissioners if they had any questions for the applicant? Okay, not seeing any hands raised. I'm going to ask if there is anyone in the public that wishes to address the commission on this case this evening. If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I'm going to close it to the public and open it at commission discussion. Commissioner Wilson, would you please start the discussion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess if I had a choice, I'd like to see brown legs with a green roof to best replicate what the forest looks like, but otherwise it looks like a great project. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now.
Okay. I think this is a great project, and it's something that is severely needed in our climate. And green seems like a good color. I'm happy with green or brown, and you don't have to plant any trees around it. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Commissioner Ruggles.
Well, thank you very much. I rather like Commissioner Wilson's suggestion: green roof, brown supporting structure. So I don't know whether that would work for the applicant or not. If not, green is a good option as well. And other than that, I can certainly make the necessary findings for a DRO for this in either case.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Best.
Thank you. I agree with the preferring the green. I'd say all green, but I think would fit in better just looking at the picture in front of us. It's a big structure close to the highway, but on the other hand, it's folks running around on horses, and that's kind of cool to see as you drive into our western town. And I think it's appropriate. I can make the findings. I'm kind of enthusiastic about it, and I just love to see the big smile on Mary Williams' face. So that's great.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Best. Commissioner Towhee.
I agree with green, and I also make the findings, and I agree as far as the granting and approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Vice Chair Burton.
Well, looking at what Bob has up right now, I'd prefer the emerald green. That would be my first choice. I can settle for the cocoa brown, but the emerald green would be my first choice. I am probably more impacted visually than anybody else since I live in Kachina Village. I'm right across the way. I pass this at least twice a day. And I don't have a problem with it. I think having a cover to allow the space to be used all year round without interference from weather would be great. I love seeing the people out there riding their horses. So yeah, I'm in support, and my personal preference is that emerald green there on the screen.
Oh, okay. All right. The applicant did say that the owner was in favor of using the color that was selected. So I'm going to ask anyone who does not like the emerald green to please raise their hand. Seeing none, it looks like emerald green it is. So I do want to just extend the courtesy to Mr. Gustafson again to make sure that I did not misrepresent your statement about the owner being okay with anything.
I think emerald green will be just fine.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gustafson.
Yep. thank you.
Okay. Yeah, with that, I believe we're ready for a motion in a second, please.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve DRO-24-001 as provided with emerald green as the color.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Wilson for approval of DRO 24-001 and a second by Commissioner Ruggles. And that the color be emerald green. All in favor, please say aye. Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Commissioner Ruggles?
Aye.
Commissioner Best?
Aye.
Commissioner Tohi?
Aye.
Vice Chair Burton?
Aye.
This is Chair Ontiveros. I also vote aye. The motion passes unanimously. The final item on the agenda is call to public for items not on the agenda. So is there anyone in the public that wishes to address the commission this evening for items not on the agenda? Seeing none, my clock shows 7:55 p.m. and the meeting is adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Great job tonight.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.